there's already some sitting up here, public, and then.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Friday, June 16th, 2023. This is a regular meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. I'd like to call this meeting to order at exactly 2:30 p.m. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll do roll call. Commissioner Tony Sharp.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Commissioner Ed Chernowski.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Bennett is absent. Commissioner Bunky Markert.
Here.
And Mayor Stan Mills is here. We have a quorum and are able to formally conduct business today. With that, I'd like to identify the staff. It takes more than just the commissioners to run a meeting, and the staff contribute immensely to the meeting. City Secretary Ann Womack is over here. City Manager Lawrence Christian. City Solicitor Glenn Mandalis. Over in the back corner is Alex Burns, a second solicitor for the city. Chief Keith Banks hiding back there. We've got Liz Lingo, city arborist. Raise your hand. Matt Janis, building and licensing supervisor. And I think I caught everybody. Thank you all for being here. With that, I'd like to thank everybody that's here in person. As you know, we value your input, and at certain times during the meeting, we'll call on you to see if you have any feedback. And we'll probably limit you to 5 minutes a time. The agenda says 3 minutes, and we've got a lot on our plate today, so 5 minutes per topic I think will be sufficient. I also like to thank everybody that's watching virtually for tuning in. Also like to remind everybody that support documents, some of the documents that we have in hand when they are available are embedded into the agenda ahead of time so that you can go to cityofrehoboth.com, look through the portal, find all the documents, and study them before you get here. Also like to make note that we're starting about a half hour later than normal today. That's because the City of Rehoboth Beach had the distinction this afternoon of hosting an award ceremony for Senator Tom Carper. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers presented Delaware Senior Senator with its Gold de Fleury Medal. The Gold de Fleury Medal is awarded typically to a single individual each year, just one person nationwide each year. And so we give congratulations to Senator Carper down at the bandstand right before this meeting for being this year's recipient for his many years of dedicated service to authorizing and funding critical water resources projects such as beach nourishment. We in Rehoboth Beach are also grateful for the Senator's many years of leadership. So that's why we're 30 minutes late. If we could only have bumped him up 30 minutes and we would have avoided getting drenched out in that downburst. But with that, the next item of business is something very special, and the person receiving it has no clue. So we're going to be doing a little surprise here. Vice President is going to join me. Eddie Cole, we have something special for you.
Have something special?
Yes.
I hope we stop being hungry.
sit right there. And we're gonna get Patrick here, and we're gonna get your two sons on this side of you.
I wasn't prepared.
She's here. Let me just interrupt her. I told her she was there. The Lake Drawer was on the agenda. Serious when it comes to Lake Drawer. So I got her here under false pretenses. You may arrest me.
And unfortunately, the lake is not on the agenda today. But you direct your anger to your son.
Can I speak up about it?
No. We have a proclamation for Kitty T. Cole Day. July 7th,
Yeah,
2023. Whereas Kitty Toppin was born July 7th, 1923 in Georgetown, Delaware, and has spent the vast majority of her nearly 100 years as a city of Rehoboth. Can you read that?
City of Rehoboth Beach, resident. And whereas Kitty Cole was a child, her father, George, who worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad, moved the Toppin family to Rehoboth Beach, and the family lived in a home on Rehoboth Avenue where M&T Bank is located today. And whereas Kitty graduated from Rehoboth High School and located on the current site of City Hall. Further, on the boardwalk in front of the old Dolly's location, she met her husband, Charles Cole, then a Rehoboth Beach patrol lifeguard, and much later, a City of Rehoboth Beach commissioner, who served for 12 years. And whereas Kitty and her family have lived on Olive Avenue for more than 70 years and continue to live there today, and whereas some might say that Kitty didn't get very far, but the truth is she never wanted to leave. And whereas Kitty has demonstrated a lifelong commitment to the betterment of Rehoboth Beach and Sussex County, and whereas Kitty Cole became the first woman to hold the office of Sussex County Council member, completing her husband's term after he had passed away, and whereas over the years Kitty has kept a constant vigil over the changes happening in Rehoboth Beach and has written numerous letters to the editor and attended many city meetings to comment on issues of importance to her, including Lake Gerard, trees, the beach, parking, ducks, and many other topics. Now, therefore, we, Stan Mills and Board Vice President Patrick Gossett, along with the entire Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim July 7th, 2023 as Kitty Cole Day in the city of Rehoboth Beach to honor her 100th birthday. Congratulations.
Kitty, we're going to give you this proclamation to take home and frame and make 5 copies for your children.
Thank you.
We also want to let you know that for your birthday, we have a city bench that has
Couldn't give me a city.
it has an engraved plaque on it. It says lifetime Rehoboth Beach resident Kitty Key Cole celebrating 100 years.
Well, thank you.
So to answer your question, yes, now
Okay,
you may
well-
sit
Well,
down.
thank you, everybody, for attending this meeting.
Thank you, Kitty. This is going to be a long meeting. If you're smart, you get out of here.
Wait, she did want me to give this to the city manager. It's about Lake Drawer.
Okay.
We're working on it.
We can leave.
You can leave.
We don't have to listen.
That's good.
It's not on the agenda. It was just to get you here. Get her back. I got it. He's got it. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So the easy way to get a proclamation in your name is to turn 100. With that, we'll continue with the agenda. We've got a correspondence, again, is a support document, so it's embedded in the agenda, and you're able to access those. There were 4 letters correspondence related to zoning issue, 5 pieces of correspondence on the trees. There was actually an additional one from Dave Diefendorfer that didn't get embedded. So that brings it to 9, and we can address him when we get to the tree topics. With that, we're going to move along to the approval of minutes. The executives, we'll do these, let's see. I want to do first the special meeting. I'm sorry, a special meeting held on October 20th, 2022. Now, the only commissioners sitting up here that can vote on this are the ones that attended that meeting, and that would be the mayor, Commissioner Legree, Commissioner Gossett, Commissioner Chernowski. Could I get and the same thing for special meeting of December 15, 2020, the same for. If there's no corrections to anybody, I would entertain a motion to accept both sets of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Ed Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Patrick Gossett. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's only the 4 of us. The 4 of us vote unanimously to accept those 2 sets of minutes. Thank you very much. With that, the rest of the vote minutes are more recent. All the commissioners are able to vote. We have an executive session on June 5, 2023, regular meetings on April 21 and May 19, 2023, special meeting on May 8th and June 5th, 2023. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of minutes there. Are there any corrections that need to be made to those sets of minutes?
No.
If not, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve those 5 sets of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Tony Sharp to approve the 5 sets of minutes noted. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, and the minutes are carried unanimously. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the next item of business, which is City Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Mayor, Commissioners, residents, thank you so much. I want to talk a little bit about beach replenishment. As you know, we're winding down, close to being done completely. Crossover repairs on the dunes began this past week. No beach work will take place over the weekend, but next week, fencing will be installed at the toe of the dunes and post and rope installed along the crossovers. Work continues rebuilding on the 88 access ramp on Maryland Avenue, and that should be completed sometime next week. As each crossover is completed, the city is reinstalling the accessibility mats as quickly as possible. We're working directly with the contractor to make sure we take them up, the dune work is done, and then the mats are reinstalled as soon as possible. Fireworks display, July 2nd. In case it's not already on your calendar, the city's annual Independence Day fireworks display will launch at approximately 9:30 p.m. July 2nd. Several road closures will be implemented that evening in order to facilitate access and safety. Please check the city's website for road closures times, as a couple of adjustments have been made this year. You can find the details of the fireworks webpage under visitors at cityofrehoboth.com. The city is hosting the Lakes Management Plan for Silver Lake and Lake Comegys. The City of Rehoboth Beach, along with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, will host a town hall meeting at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, June 28th, to share and receive feedback on the draft Lakes Management Plan developed by Silver Lake and Lake Comegys. The town hall will last approximately until 10:30 and will allow for an open house and informal discussions, a brief presentation by the Corps of Engineers, and a question and answer session. Public comments on the plan are requested by July 28th. That has gone out in a press release, along with the draft plan and a link to provide any resident feedback or any type of feedback whatsoever. City Hall will not be open July 8th after all, as we are not having a election this year. I announced at our last meeting that City Hall would be open on July 8th, provided assistance for those who wanted to register to vote in this year's municipal election. As we are not going to have an election, appears that we're not going to have an election, only these individuals will have filed for the positions. City Hall will not open on Saturday, July 8th, pending the confirmation of the Board of Commissioners and the mayor that later on in the agenda. So everything is prefaced on that. City offices are closed Monday. On a similar note, in celebration of June 19th, also known as Juneteenth, residential waste, the city office will be closed, but residential waste will continue as scheduled. And Mayor, and finally, like to make a presentation and request to pay street aid expenditures in the amount of $10,992.84.
I move approval of the street aid expenditure.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Stranowski and a second by Commissioner Jay Legree to approve a payment of street aid expenditures in the amount of $10,992.84. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And the amount is authorized unanimously. Thank you very much. With that, we move right on to...
Questions, Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry, City Manager, I've gotten quite a few questions from constituents about how the date for the fireworks was picked. I think typically we had been doing it on July 3rd, and now it is July 2nd.
That predated my arrival to the community, so I will have to turn to wherever that was decided.
So, as I understand, and Chief Banks can reply as well, we like to have our fireworks display on the weekend, one of the weekends around the holiday weekend days, and we try to schedule it to avoid other communities' fireworks display.
Thank you.
Well, I think, Chief, isn't that a big part of it, other communities, because it takes more than one fire department here to monitor our town and other towns, and so everybody has to coordinate.
Correct. The reality is we had to move ours from the 4th because Dewey Beach was having their fireworks in some other local jurisdictions where our fire company went out to assist them, and they couldn't be in two places at once. And they were bringing people from upstate, and it was getting harder and harder because more and more towns are doing fireworks. So I'm not sure how many years it goes back, but we've been doing it mostly on a Sunday. Sometimes we'll pivot that day, depending on what day the holiday falls on, which side, if it's going to be a Saturday or a Sunday, but typically it's a Sunday.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Thank you,
City
Chief.
City Manager, one other, we get statistical reports put in our box, and I just paid closer attention to the Alderman Court, and I see that parking ticket appeals is listed. For example, May was 162. Is there any way that we can start breaking out this on how many appeals were overturned versus were not? Any more of a breakdown?
Okay. Yes, I'll get with the
On the outcome of
on the
those
outcome
appeals.
okay,
Yeah.
outcome of the tickets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the city manager? All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll go to city solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to update quickly on the 330 Rehoboth hospitality cases of the rezoning case, at the rezoning that was denied. The city manager provided all the commissioners with a filing that occurred earlier this week. That's the filing we anticipated, where the case was refiled in Superior Court. Remember, it was transferred from Court of Chancery, Superior Court, so that was a refiling that we expected. In the Superior Court case, there will not be any discovery, so there will be no depositions, no request for production of documents, so that'll speed up the pace a little bit, and I'd anticipate probably 6 to 9 months we'll have a result in that case. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to departmental reports. Departmental reports are embedded in the agenda. They happen to be a building and licensing report, which has information about permits and numbers and data. There's also a very thorough report from the police department that has information on number of noise complaints and driving citations that were issued. So rather than report them, just take a look for the support documents in the agenda. With that, no committee reports were forwarded to me. I don't know why. I'll check and make sure they catch up for next time. Committee reports, nobody indicated that they had any committee reports this time from any of the chairs. Liaison reports. We have liaisons between the city and certain organizations. I am the liaison for the Chamber of Commerce. Carol Everhart, the executive director of the Chamber, is not able to be here. I have 2 documents that we will embed into the agenda after the fact. If you want some more data, you can go there. Basically, she wants to report that the Rehoboth Beach Boardwalk kiosk is open and being manned by the Chamber. The dining guides have already been received and delivered to local accommodations and realtors. The 2023 Realtor Bag Program began in early May and is underway. Don't we have something inside the Realtor Bag, Lynn? What do we have?
In July, we'll have in the July bags, we'll have a flyer with several animal issue messages, like please no dogs on the boardwalk, and pick up after your dog, and don't leave your dog in a hot car. So that messaging will be included in the bags.
Right, refresh our memory. Thank you very much. And with that, there's a data sheet you can also access as a support document. Basically, it gives data for May and just only week 1 of June, but it shows that the accommodations rate, if I read this correctly, are all but one week down from a year ago. So look in the agenda for these support documents. With that, we'll go to the liaison for the Historical Society. Commissioner Legree.
The Historical Society on the 9th of June was the last day for the director of the museum. She is, and the Historical Society, the Board of Directors are currently organizing a search committee, and we're looking for a new director of the Rehoboth Beach Museum. Nancy Alexander had been at that position for 15 years, and she will be missed.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
With that, we'll go to the liaison of Rehoboth Beach Main Street. Ed, I think you've got.
Yep, we've got Board President Dick Byrne and Executive Director Dan Slagle here to give that report.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Just wanted to talk a little bit about Main Street. And my name is Dan Slagle. I'm the Executive Director of Rehoboth Beach Main Street. I just want to start off saying what we're about. I hear this a lot from downtown. What is Main Street about? You know, or what's the difference between us and the Chamber? So I wanted to explain that Rehoboth Beach Main Street delivers initiatives that support and promise our local businesses and community as a vibrant and desirable place to live. Main Street works to bring the community together, and residents, visitors, and businesses. So I always believe we're stronger together. That's what Main Street is all about. Little things that we've been working on for the past couple months, and very successful. We had 3 big events recently. We had Gumbo Crawl, the Oldies Dance, and also the Margarita Crawl. And I spoke to a lot of the businesses after these events, and revenue was up from these events. So the hotels, restaurants, and the retail. So we're very proud to bring businesses downtown. Also, we are working on our fashion show, Runway 2024. It will take place, mark your calendars. It will be on Sunday, April 21st, 2024. It will be here at the Convention Center. So we're very excited about that. Also looking forward to the fall, November, December, we have our Community Unity Dinner and also a holiday stroll planned. Right now, we're training our ambassadors that are volunteers for Main Street to visit all the downtown businesses. And we're training them to find out what the needs are for downtown from our businesses. And also, we want to involve the residents. That's why we created a newsletter that goes out each month. That's in progress for July. Our newsletter has a 70% open rate. So it's very informative, and we make sure all the community is ensure that it's all being well served. Also, I have been assigned the task. I'm really proud to be part of the Rehoboth Beach Library Task Force. So it is an honor to sit on the task force and, with questions and opinions. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Dick Byrne.
Hi, everyone. Always a pleasure to be here. Dick Byrne, Chair of the Board of Directors for Rehoboth Beach Main Street. A few more things to share with you. We have just recently kicked off nominations for the annual Cottage and Town Awards. Nominations are due to us August 11th. These awards recognize local residents and local commercial property owners who contribute to the charm, the beauty, the ambiance of Rehoboth Beach through 4 areas. One is preservation, secondly is restoration and renovation, third, new construction, and fourth is landscaping. So if you know of anyone that's deserving of a nomination, please encourage that. The information is all on the Rehoboth Beach Main Street website, again, due August 11th, and we encourage all of our residents and commercial property owners to take a look at this. I have a couple of handouts. One of each, Commissioner. I'll hand it to you, and you can just send it down as it's appropriate over the course of your meeting. Thank you. Secondly, and this is bragging a little bit about Dan Slagle, our Executive Director, and our organization, Rehoboth Beach Main Street. We were recently designated again this year as an accredited Main Street America program. That doesn't happen easily. There are approximately 12 main streets across the state of Delaware. Of those 12, only 5 have achieved this annual accreditation. We work on a fairly rigorous set of standards to meet what is required of us at the National Main Street Center. The National Main Street Center, by the way, is a program of the National Trust for Historic Renovation. So this is not a designation that is easily achieved each year. And so a lot of credit goes to Dan and to our board of directors for doing this. This accreditation recognizes the exemplary commitment of Rehoboth Beach Main Street to preservation-based economic development and community revitalization, which is what we are all about. And here is a copy of what we received from Rehoboth Beach, or from the Main Street America program. So on a lighter note, if you've been around the museum and the Main Street building recently, you will have noticed that we have one of the historic 2003 dolphins in the garden right outside the building. If you think back to 2003, for all of us that were around, you remember that collaborative program between the Art League and Camp Rehoboth and the auctions that took place. And some of those dolphins are still around. The few that are around are not looking very good. Well, one was donated to Main Street recently, and we brought in a local artist, and she gave us a wonderful opportunity that we accepted to have it totally restored. So it has now been restored, cleaned up. It's painted with Rehoboth Beach Main Street colors. It's very cheery, and you can actually see it as you come down. If you come slowly down, take a quick look off of Rehoboth Avenue, but wander over through Grove Park and take a look at this dolphin. It's on our website. A number of photos there that are fun, and it just seems like an appropriate place to have one of these historic dolphins. And speaking of that location, I hope you're all enjoying the new garden that went in last fall and was completed this spring, just adjacent to the museum on the Rehoboth Avenue side. That garden is now complete, and with support from our city arborist Liz and the good people at Sposato and others in the community who donated to that. And now weekly through Rehoboth in Bloom, we've got a gorgeous garden there where, as it used to just be grass that would brown out later in the summer. Yeah. So pleased to be here and with all of you. Any questions for Rehoboth Beach Main Street?
I just wanted to add, extend my compliments to Cindy and all the folks with Rehoboth and Bloom and all involved with the garden. I think it looks fantastic and a wonderful invitation into the city as you drive over the bridge. So.
Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, we have over 100 planters now. We have several garden areas that are being attended to by Bloom. We've got about 85 volunteers. And if you get up early every Tuesday morning, they are out there starting at 7:30 in little teams all over the city, taking care of these many garden areas. So it's our pleasure to have that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dick.
Dick, I was on the board of directors of the Homeowners Association when Main Street had its first meeting. And there have been some ups and downs and bumps, but I never imagined the heights that Main Street has risen to in these last few years. And Dan, you are the greatest, and with a very able and capable board of directors, but just outstanding. Thank you for everything you've done to Rehoboth, for Rehoboth Beach, and keep it up.
Thanks, Commissioner. And with this gentleman retiring in a few months, as I understand it, there may be another Main Street volunteer out there.
Thank you, Dick.
Yeah, thank you all.
Dick, before you leave,
Sure.
Now you've got my attention, and I'm concerned about the vintage dolphins that are going to become extinct at some point. Is there any discussion about exactly how many are left and what could be done with them?
No, that's a good point. I don't know, and I don't know that anyone is paying much attention, but they are going to go away if they're not tended to the way we just took care of this one.
So who might, could y'all find out who's the point person? And maybe, I don't know who the keeper of them.
Yeah, well, if you remember, they were auctioned off and spread all over. Is there one at the library, Rachel? Oh, a small one, not, okay. I think at one time there was one of the large ones.
It's just food for thought, because there might be a way to, if anybody ever wanted to raise some funds, do something with the vintage dolphins that happen to be left.
And we have a local artist who obviously is good at it and gave us a wonderful price.
Okay.
And so, yeah, a very good point. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Just one other question, if I may. The Margarita Call, it was a great event. And you talked about, we referred to businesses are up. And I wonder for future events like that, other than just anecdotal data, if you could try to capture any hard data actually from the participants, just so that we can, really show the success of it.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks.
Yeah, we are working to try and get better at surveying our members and all of the businesses. What we find is the response rate is low. If we go in person, people will talk about it if they're not too busy in their business. But to try to get people to sit down at their computer when it's the off season and it's the last thing they want to do, and then when it is the season, they're so darn busy that. Very good point. It's on our mind all the time.
We'll let you know we're working on creating surveys to get that data too.
All right. Thank you.
Before you go, I wanted to do a follow-up. If you recall, some months ago, the commissioners tasked Main Street, or tasked me with approaching Main Street to ask them to do an economic vitality analysis of the canal dock. A little time passed, but within that task from the commissioners, it included that the city manager and the mayor would write them a letter with some guidelines for what we want to accomplish. Rather than, we haven't devised that letter yet, but instead we met with them about a week and a half ago. We both had a little homework to do, and then we'll get back together again. And I think how we'll approach it is we'll have Main Street bring forward exactly an outline of what they can accomplish to make sure it meets our goals. And so I don't know if that would be as early as the July workshop or the August workshop, but
Well,
probably the August workshop at this point.
we were pleased to have the meeting a week or so ago, and like I said then, we will do our best to be helpful to the city in better understanding how the whole dock area it can become a better asset and a better economic asset for the city.
Right,
Yeah,
very good.
thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dan?
Mayor, I don't have any updates from the Cape Henlopen Senior Center.
No, Senior Center, other than I think I understand they canceled their,
They did. They
Pancake
canceled
breakfast.
their pancake breakfast, so not until the fall it'll come back.
and with that, thank you, Ed. With that, we'll go to the liaison for the public library. Do you have a report or
I do,
somebody
actually.
from the library?
The primary focus, I think, as most citizens of the city are aware of, the Library Task Force, which has been meeting to discuss the library's plans for constructing a second facility outside of the city and also maintaining a presence within the city. We've had 2 meetings to date, and both Commissioner Markert and myself are on the task force. So I'll just give you a little background, if you will. The task force is conducted and facilitated by Trish Anderson, who is one of the principals with Horizon Philanthropic from Lewis, Delaware. There are 21 members on the task force. 10 of those represent in-town members, and 11 of them from out-of-town members. There's also 7 members of the Rehoboth Board of Directors that attend the meetings. They're there as observers and able to answer questions for us if we want. Our first meeting was May 24th, and that was basically the introduction meeting. Just a few points. They covered the mission and vision of the public library, the role of the task force, the rationale for the second facility, the map of the service areas, the site locations for each facility, the timeline for recommendations to conceptual drawings, the library users research, and summary of existing library services and sources for the project funding. At the last meeting, which was June 7th, they convened an expert panel, which was comprised of Dr. Annie Norman, who is the Delaware State Librarian, Rachel West, who is a librarian from the Huckisson Library, who have just recently gone through some building and expansion experiences, Hugh Lee, who is the president of the Lewis Board of Directors, and Jen Noonan, who is the children's librarian and program coordinator at the Lewis Library. This expert panel presented thoughts and suggestions of the positives and the negatives of their experiences in building and operating new libraries. And I had one bottom line takeaway, and I'll share that and ask Commissioner Markert also. But the consensus, I think, that I took away from that libraries are not for books, or they're not for quiet places any longer. Libraries are about people and are about community gathering spaces. Bunky, I don't know if you would care to expand on that, or is that the similar takeaway?
Well, certainly, and I wouldn't necessarily diminish the fact that it's not about books. Of course, it is about books, but it seems the concern, and I think I would say the focus of I would say the majority of the participants there at the most recent meeting was all about that there's the sort of demand for activities and programming and so forth sort of is really there's no cap to it. I think, and they have a very strong sense of this whole notion of build it and they will come, and so forth. I think their experiences have borne out that they have come and demanded more. So I think that's something that we sort of need to keep in mind with our as this process progresses. That it's really about a place for people to convene and for programs to be there that the public wants and desires and in some cases demands. So I thought the most recent meeting was very compelling.
Thank you. Our next meeting is June 21st, And we're very fortunate today to have Rachel Wackett with us today, who is the director of the public library. And I think you have some thoughts you'd want to share with us for that next meeting. If you can just stand up at the microphone, it'd be great.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners,
afternoon.
residents, friends. We do have some thoughts. First of all, just some information sharing. We do have a survey located in the library for residents and non-residents and visitors to share what services you use. We are compelling it throughout the season. So we'll have a good sample of several hundred people's thoughts and ideas and concerns, questions, opinions. It's important for us to take that data and use it as we enter in these different phases during this process. Second update, the bricks are in, the bricks have been laid, the commemorative bricks are proudly along the front, and we urge if there's a person that's special to your life or has a lifetime of reading or literacy, please think about that person and what that would mean to them. And coming back to libraries are not just books. We recognize the need to evolve and change. And that's not a bad thing because we're supporting literacy, whether it's financial, digital, print, media, technical. All of those areas comprise literacy in some way, shape, or form. And that's what helps our community, our workers, our visitors. Everyone that comes here is welcome to come to a free and welcoming space. We are inclusive. And we genuinely, my staff and I genuinely welcome to see anyone come through our doors. We don't want to see you leave empty-handed. But we did talk in a little bit about this, and I'll be presenting at the task force as well. And and I don't want to take up everyone's valuable time with that, but it's definitely going to be an evolution of the process, but keep in mind that we are extremely respectful and aware of how deeply embedded the library is in the community's hearts and minds.
Very good.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I appreciate that. And just as a reminder, those task force meetings, the next one will be June 21st, and they're all held at the Rehoboth Beach Elementary School. They begin at 6 p.m. and typically conclude by 7:30 unless we get talking a lot. And they're open to the public, so I encourage you to attend. Thank you.
Patrick, I think I read an article that Chris had written in the Gazette, and it talked about money, about us having to support our library perhaps better than we had been. Can you enlighten me on any of that discussion, you or Bunky?
Surprised they want more money from the city. That was an overall statement that the Delaware State Librarian, Dr. Annie Norman, made, and felt that the city at this present time was underfunding the library. And I think it is a conception in some regards that the library is a part of the city. It certainly is a part of the city, but the library is an independent library in the state of Delaware. It is actually a nonprofit 501c3 run by their board of trustees. So it is not legally any responsibility financially for the city. Certainly we have been supporting them over the years, but it is as an independent library. I think, Rachel, you may be able, this gets in really deep in the weeds, I'm sorry, but it's either 3 or 4 types of libraries within the state of Delaware. There are some that are county represented or part of the county. There are some that are Delaware state libraries, and then there are a number of independent libraries, which the Rehoboth Beach falls into that category.
Is there a spreadsheet or some other document that tells how all the libraries are funded in the state? How do we compare?
DelawareLibraries.org is the general website that has that funding information in it. In reviewing it, and Rachel, you may be have more information than I, but I think the most recent information on that website is about 2015. So I don't know how current it is, but it certainly shows you all of the libraries within the state of Delaware, their categorization within the ones that I mentioned, and funding that has in the past been supplied by the state.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sharp?
I just have, I'm kind of a bottom line kind of person. I'm very curious, what is the goal for our representatives being on the task force relevant only to our library in Rehoboth downtown? How is that being viewed? What is that goal?
I think the goal is to determine what services and what the building's going to look like, what the presence is still to remain in the city. As we heard from the panel, more public space, more inclusion of the programs and aspects of a gathering place in the city. And I don't know that there is a clear, specific goal in the sense of the long term of what it's supposed to look like. That's the process that's going to take place at the next meeting. Bringing the architects in, telling you what you can do, what you can't do. We basically, what the board of directors, I think, has in their sight, this is my interpretation, is that they have 5,000 square foot lot that is what they have currently committed to having a presence in the city. I don't know what the results of the next couple meetings are going to be, but from talking with other individuals from the task force, especially in-town representatives, I don't know that that particular offering is going to fulfill what the needs and discussions of those 10 people are going to be able to fulfill. It is going from a large facility to a smaller facility and operating a second facility. There's certainly questions about funding, about staffing, and all of those aspects are still to be resolved.
I think your last three words are very informative, still to be resolved. It doesn't sound like there is a clear goal.
No.
It doesn't sound like we have data that tells us even superficially what is going on with the need category. So let me just stop for the moment, because I don't want to get into the weeds, to implore our representatives to really start honing in on, is this the right place for our representatives to be advocating for what we want? Because my other oddity that's happened just in real time here is I don't think I have, in all of the budget discussions I have been privy to, I've never seen a letter from the library that said, y'all are underfunding us. So to me, that's coming out of left field. And that's the kind of thing that starts to irritate me. And I don't need further irritation on this subject. So I'm just kind of wondering, if I'm off base, somebody tell me, but I have never heard those words put together.
But I heard from you, I believe, that it was an outsider citing that they're underfunded.
The outsider was Dr. Annie Norman, who is the Delaware State Librarian.
Still,
I agree that it's an outsider,
she's
but
not affiliated with the downtown library, I don't believe.
Yes.
Well, and maybe there's a lot for discussion at another time, but
There's a lot for discussion.
yeah.
Okay.
So maybe as y'all continue to go to meetings, we can have a real agenda item rather than just a report to really hone in on what is going on here, because the whole thing has made me unsettled from the beginning.
Well, I share your concern. My interpretation is these first two meetings have really been dealing with a 50,000-foot level. This next meeting is one where the groups will be divided, if you will, into in town and out of town, as I understand it. And I think that perhaps is where those discussions will begin in earnest. That's my intention, and I think Bunky's the same.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I think my intention from the beginning, I thought I articulated, was that we create this group, you all go to the meetings, and at some point in the future, you get together with me and say, hey, now is the time for an agenda item. So I think you hit the nail on the head, yeah.
Okay.
Are the meetings open to the public? Are they on Zoom or?
They're not on Zoom. It's only in person at Rehoboth Elementary, 6 to 7:30. The next one is June 21st.
Thank you.
And just so you know, you enter on the side, this Stokely Street side, where the kind of gymnasium is.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. With that, we'll move on to the first item of real business is on the screen there, public hearing on the matter of amending comprehensive development plan, the future land use map in relation to potentially changing the zoning designation. I'm going to abbreviate and just say 1028 and not give tax parcel numbers. 1028A Scarborough Avenue Extended from C3 commercial to R1 single-family residence, and by changing the zoning designation of the property located at 1028B Scarborough Avenue Extended from C3 to R1. So these are both similar requests. They mirror each other for each property, but the goal here of this agenda topic is to amend the future land use map only.
Mayor, can I just add that the agenda item does indicate the actual zoning designations that have been requested in the future land use map. Remember, this is would only be a change from a commercial designation to a residential designation without giving the specific zoning district.
And I'm going to put that map up there and reinforce that in a minute. Now, my preface is going to span to the second item. We are going to take these in order, but I'd also want to say the second item is going to be a public hearing on the matter of amending the zoning map by changing one or more zoning designations of the properties located at 1028A Scarborough Avenue Extended, 1028B Scarborough Avenue Extended, and also 20663 Coastal Highway, also known as Rehoboth Auto Repair. Is that a fair descriptor of it? So that is the thing. So my preface goes through both of them. There are copies of the ordinance for the three zoning changes are up here if you want to get a copy of it. They were not embedded.
That's right.
They were
The
not.
public hearing resolution was embedded, but the actual exhibits, which included the ordinances, were not. So if any member of the public would like to review the ordinances, which are consistent with what's on the agenda, you're welcome to do so here.
So let me give a preface here before we get into delve into this. If you recall the timeline, July 25th, 2022, Rehoboth Auto Repair made a formal request to change zoning designation from C3 secondary commercial to C1 central commercial. A copy of that request is embedded in the agenda. If you recall, after that request was made, the Board of Commissioners got together. We tasked the Planning Commission with analysis and making recommendations to this board on the request to change that zoning. At that point, the Planning Commission conducted a single meeting, not coming to any conclusion, but instead were left with outstanding inquiries. That is the meeting in the matter of Rehoboth Auto Repair request for change in zoning. I solicited those outstanding queries from the Planning Commission. They are included as a support document in today's meeting, but I also forwarded those questions to the owner's representative, Carlton Savage. Subsequently, the Board of Commissioners received 2 additional requests for changes in zoning designation from the owners of 1028A and 1028B Scarborough Avenue Extended. One was a formal request on November 17th, 2022 from 1028B Scarborough Avenue Extended, seeking a change from C3 Central Commercial, that's the existing zoning designation, to R1 Residential District. Again, a copy of that is also included as a support document. Similarly, on December 5th, 2022, 1028A Scarborough Avenue Extended. Previous one was B, this one was A, seeking the same change in zoning designation from the current zoning designation of C3 secondary commercial or central commercial to R1. So we have two requests for the same thing. And then Rehoboth Auto Repair was a little different request. After we received those three requests, subsequently, the Board of Commissioners decided as a board that we would handle the three requests for changes in zoning designations without the Planning Commission recommendations. And so we withdrew the request to the Planning Commission seeking recommendations from them on the Rehoboth Auto Repair request. So in order to review the process to change zoning designations, we first need to look to the future land use map within the certified CDP. So I'm putting it on screen here. This is the existing map. Future land use map. What I want you to notice on here, that alluding to what Glenn was saying earlier, is the colors are minimal. You have a red, you have a yellow, and you have, this is a mustard color, and the designations over here. On the left side of the table here, you have all these multicolors. Those are zoning classifications. And if you look at the zoning map, you can see that it is quite colorful. You got purples and greens and mustards and orange and pinks, etc. Whereas on the future land use map, notice that you've got minimal colorations. For the residential, identifying R1S, R1, and R2, you've got yellow, just yellow. On the commercial zones, there's a C1, C2, and C3. You only have red. So again, going back, there is no differentiation on the future land use map other than generic yellow for residential and generic red for commercial. The proposed amendments to the future land use map, let me go back. So in looking at this map, again, looking at the process to how to go forward in seeking Rehoboth Auto Repairs change, we first need to look at this map. They are this little area right here. There's this little square right here. But notice there, what's important is they're in red. They want to go from C3 to C1, commercial to commercial. This map says it's okay that if there were any changes in there, maintaining the commercial or going to commercial would be satisfactory. Let's look at 1028A and 1028B. Again, they both have mirroring requests to go from commercial, which is right here. These two lots here are on the future land use map designated as commercial. But the future land use map also indicates that if we were to consider changing the zoning designation of those two properties that happen to be 1028A and 1028B, Scarborough Avenue Extended, they must remain or be changed to commercial. So what we had to do from there is we applied for and had city planners Wallace Montgomery represent the city in front of the Office of State Planning for a plus review, where the conclusion of that hearing by state agencies was that they gave us their authorization to pursue those changes. So in other words, they gave us the permission to pursue changing these two lots here representing 1028A and 1028B Scarborough Avenue Extended to the yellow that is on this map. So So that's essentially what we're looking at there. And a copy of that approval letter from the Plus is embedded in the agenda. It's dated April 20th, but it's included in there. Just as an aside, I want to give thanks to the owners of Rehoboth Auto Repair, as they were noticed earlier of these additional requests, and they were amenable to not us acting on their request sooner than later. They were amenable to seeking the Plus review and addressing those zoning change requests first. So thank you for that, Carl. So today, the first public hearing will address amending the future land use map to reflect that the two lots only, 1028A and 1028B, are to be amended from the commercial zoning designation identified in red on the map. Here's an enlargement. These two lots here, 1028A, 1028B, they're looking to amend this map to change those two lots to yellow, which designates residential. And again, for Rehoboth Auto Repair, since they are commercial and want to go to an upgraded commercial, it's already red, we don't have to act on that at all. I expect that we can conclude addressing the possible changes to this future land use map today with a vote. And if we come to a favorable conclusion, then we can proceed on to conducting the second hearing. The approach to the second agenda topic for me is to address and act on, vote if possible, but focusing only on the two Scarborough Avenue properties. Look at those, see if we can resolve that first, come to conclusion, act on it, vote on it, hopefully. And then, and only then, reach out to the Rehoboth Auto Repair commercial request and act on that. And I don't know how far we'll get today. I'm hoping that we get to hear from all the members of the public, obviously, and others. And because these are public hearings, commissioners get the first shot and the last shot at talking, but then the public gets an opportunity to speak out, as does the applicant, of course. Now this, once we get to, because the content of both of these agenda topics intertwine, I'd like to enter all the written correspondence, which so far is comprised of 4 letters, comprise all those into the record for each of the public hearings. And I think the support documents should also be entered into the record.
Agreed.
And then likewise, when we receive oral testimony from the public, it may be hard to discern which one you're talking about, this, or this. So we'll incorporate all such testimony into the record for both public hearings. And that's why we've covered for everything. And then finally, we'll have a reminder when it's time to vote, because this is part of the zoning code. We have to give a rationale for how we vote and everything. Now, do you want to give us any legal standards for any of this now or in the next section?
I think probably, Mayor, well, I was going to say let's go forward with the public hearing first, but I guess I can talk just briefly, because while you're listening to the comment, you'll probably want to be thinking about some of this. If you look a little bit different for the future land use map, but as it goes to zoning changes, the standard you'll be judged by is an arbitrary and capricious standard. So you can't make a decision that a court would find to be arbitrary and capricious. So there has to be evidence on the record that you're relying upon to make your decision. And the courts have said that there's just has to be substantial evidence, that is enough evidence on the record for you to come to the conclusion that you've come to. It doesn't have to be the best decision. The judge might say that he or she would have made a different decision, but that doesn't matter. So long as there is substantial evidence on the record to support your decision, the decision will be sustainable. Secondarily, a court would look at, is your decision free of legal error? Legal error would be something like there's a participant on the Board of Commissioners who's voting but actually has a prejudice and should not be voting, or legal error would be misconstruing a legal provision that you're relying upon, but you relied upon it in error. That's legal error. So that's the two items the court would look at. Is there substantial evidence on the record for you to have made the decision you made, and was the decision free of legal error? So as you listen to comment and as you read the letters, you should be relying only upon those things that are in the record of this proceeding. If there are things you've learned outside of the record, you should present them and allow your fellow commissioners to know that you learned this outside the record. Here's a fact that you know to be true, so they can rely upon it as well, and it's on the record. Are there any questions for me as we head into the public hearing portion?
Glenn, when you were talking about the legal standards here, are you talking about just the future land use map or both public hearings?
I'm talking more specifically as to the zoning changes. The future land use map, you have a lot of discretion because it's your decision as to how your city should develop. So you have a lot of discretion in that area, less discretion in the zoning decision because you have to have substantial evidence on the record.
Understood, thank you.
So where is the actual ordinance for this?
This one for the future land use map would just be a motion consistent with the public hearing resolution and the language of the agenda, and I've got a prepared motion that I can suggest after we hear public comment.
All right, very good. We'll go to the commissioners first for any comments, and then we'll go to the members of the public, and then come back to the commissioners after we close the public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to offer anything? Well, again, up here on the map, that's the future land use map. It's got the colored designations there. We're looking at these two lots. This one here is 1028B, I believe, and 1028A. The plus group gave no reason to deny us the ability to change these designations, and considering that they're already been changed to residential use, I would favor, primarily based on that, making the change to the future land use map. Is there anybody else that wants to offer anything?
I just had a question, if I may. I can just say that I was on the planning commission at the time that was a Truett property, and they requested a partitioning, and we partitioned the lots. And the discussion then was basically he was sort of leaving it up to what he felt would be the most marketable. The most marketable opportunity for him. He wasn't really sure the fact that those lots are in proximity to, almost immediate proximity to Coastal Highway. Might they be more suited in a commercial, as a commercial, and that could be, a lot more more options for the property owner if they wanted to have something other than a residence, although they could be a residence, but it was merely the fact that they still had the commercial designation, meaning that there would be options. Now the folks here that have come before us and are saying that they want to have it residential, I mean, that's the current use that it is, and I certainly understand and appreciate that, and that's more or less the way it appears. But it seems like it's for us, we get to basically decide. Yes, that's probably what we expect it to be for the foreseeable future, or for some justification, and therefore we're going to make this change, and obviously they're asking for it, but I think we have to sort of, anticipate what the future holds, so I'm just curious if when it was originally designated as commercial, was that based on an expectation? I'm just curious as to how that came about, that just by virtue of it being in proximity to Coastal Highway, that it would therefore be commercial. I don't know if we have any sort of history on this as to why it was.
And I don't think we give you any history on that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's basically that we're here to basically foresee what we anticipate the future will hold, I would think, right? Okay.
Just two notes here. If you look at the screen here, this one property here that actually abuts Route 1, I did, if you recall, I did approach them to give them an awareness of the two requests from 1028A and 1028B, to ask if they wanted to join in on the request also, and the answer was no. And the rationale was they really wanted to leave it alone, so that if in the future they chose to sell it, it would give them more flexibility, because it would be multi-zoned as commercial and being able to put a residential use in there. The other one, the top right corner, is a townhouse community, and I also approached them, and they didn't give me a rationale, but they turned down and they just wanted to leave it the current C3 zoning. So with that, if there's no other questions, I'd like to go to the members of the public. Is there any?
I'd just like to say, I think, I certainly, it's currently used as residential, and if the property owners want to change the zoning, I'm in favor of hearing that. I think my question is, you just articulated what 1028C said on not wanting to change the zoning because it provides more options should they want to sell their property. I guess my only question would be to those other two property owners, A and B, are you sure you want the change? And because you are putting a limitation on your property in terms of what can be done, so.
Well, I think that could be addressed probably more properly during the second phase of this public hearing.
Right.
But I also don't know that it's our responsibility to try to question their decision.
Yeah, understood.
With that, we'll go to the members of the public. If anybody would like to speak favor or against, or any comments. Again, what we're addressing right now is the potential amendment of the future land use map up here by taking those two designated lots identified as 1028A and 1028B and changing them from red to yellow, right?
Correct.
Anybody? Walter, adjust that microphone. It might be too low, I think. Down below. And then identify yourself in relationship to the city, please.
Walter Bringham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. I think what you're proposing to do is useful and will clear something up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last chance. Well, I'll be closing the public hearing portion of this and bring it back to the table for discussion by the commissioners. If we were to make a motion, do you want to share what a possible motion might be? And this is what, if we were in favor or against?
Right, a possible motion to amend the future land use map from a current commercial designation to a residential designation would be, I move to amend the future land use map in the 2020 comprehensive plan such that the zoning designations of tax map parcels 334-20.09-5.01 and 5.02 from commercial to residential.
I'd like either
I make-
further discussion or a move.
I move.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Tony Sharp that says, would you read it again?
Sure. This says that the motion was to amend the future land use map in the 2020 comprehensive plan such that the zoning designations of tax map parcels 334-20.09-5.01 and -5.02 from commercial to residential.
So in doing that, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? What is the effective date of this? I mean, as of tonight, we vote on it, then the map is changed, I believe.
That's right.
But then we also have to notify the Office of Public State
Planning.
Planning.
That's right.
Correct? Okay.
Just a friendly amendment, if I may, just that we could identify the properties are 1028A Scarborough Avenue Extended and 1028B Scarborough Avenue Extended.
Add those to the identifier.
Yeah, I make the amendment if the seconder would also agree.
Second.
We don't have to vote on that, do we?
No.
All right. With that, this is a zoning issue. Do they need to give a
I
rationale?
would like rationale. Remember, commissioners, as you give your rationale for why you're voting the way you're voting, you can say things such as the properties have developed that way. It's in a residential. It abuts these properties abut a residential neighborhood. And remember, you can also it's in character with the neighborhood. You can also rely upon other comments from your fellow commissioners.
We're going to take a roll call vote. We're going to start to my left to go to my right. Commissioner Tony Sharp.
I'm voting in favor because this is in the best interest of the community and the established residential use of the properties.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree.
I vote aye also, and not only is it zoned commercially if you want to sell it, but it's also would be zoned commercially if you want to buy it. And a residential designation is much better for these two lots.
Commissioner Czerniawski.
I vote aye for the reasons stated by Commissioner Sharp.
Commissioner Gossett.
I vote aye, also for reasons stated by Commissioner Sharp, and also in reviewing the minutes from the Planning Commission of October of 2015, states very clearly that the majority of the discussion was to maintain and create a neighborhood environment.
Commissioner Markert.
I vote aye for the reasons stated, but most importantly, I feel it reflects the character of the neighborhood, and I think that's the way the map should reflect.
Very good. And the chair votes aye for the reasons I articulated earlier, but also for the reasons articulated by my colleagues tonight. With that, the vote is a 6-0, and the motion passes. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. With that, we'll go to the next item of business. You can read it on the screen, abbreviated. This is a public hearing on the matter of amending Rehoboth Beach zoning map by changing one or more zoning designations of the properties at 1028A Scarborough Avenue Extended, 1028B Scarborough Avenue Extended, and 20663 Coastal Highway. As I said earlier, we're going to address the two residential ones together. And we're going to address those now because we've just resolved that we have authority by having amended the future land use map that we can proceed. We'll bring that up to the commissioners first. You have anything you'd like to say before we go to the members of the public? I do want to make sure we, again, acknowledge that all the correspondence received in this matter is entered into the record for all of the public hearings, or each of the public hearings. So, as I said earlier, let's address 1028A and 1028B and see if maybe we can come to a resolution before we tackle 20663 Coastal Highway Rehoboth Auto Repair. Anybody up here like to offer anything? Anybody up here? Well, I guess we're going to let the members of the public go first. Is there anybody here that would like to speak in favor or against or comment on any one? What I'd like you to do is, whoops, now it's too tall. down, right there. There you go. Thank you. There you go. What I'd like you to do is identify yourself, what your relationship is to the city. You can tell us where you live or approximately whatever. And then if you have something specific about a property, identify that property as A or B, or just say it's applicable to both. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah. Jim LaShora. I'm a resident of Scarborough Avenue Extended and have been to a number of these meetings and have seen the process all the way through. And at one point, I contacted someone at the state, regarding the state process through the the PLUS review and the amendment of the comprehensive development plan. And somebody can correct me if I'm under a misunderstanding, but my understanding is once you have changed this future map and say the intent is now that these are going to be residential, that there's an obligation, a requirement, a state requirement that they be rezoned within 18 months. I think there's a state law that says they must be made compliant with your future land use map within 18 months. So I think that's got to happen for 1028A and 1028B. If the future land use map has been amended so that now they're going to be shown the color for residential, they need to be rezoned within 18 months to be residential. That's my reading of the code. I don't have it in
I
front
don't
of me
know
right
that.
now.
Perhaps let's pause and get an answer. If you have any more questions, you can stand there. Otherwise, you can sit down.
I think that's it for now. It's just that I think it just kind of follows.
Sure.
They're supposed to, and it's an action item in the comprehensive development plan too. It's one like maybe even the very first thing, as far as the most important action items. You need to address the zoning things that are, inconsistent with what the, the plan shows.
I'm going to give you an opinion that's semi-uneducated about it, and then we'll turn to the attorney. My recollection in past CDPs is that it specifically mentions you shall rezone third block of Sussex Street or something. Okay, very articulate. Whereas I don't recall that the future land use map actually dictates what it should be zoned to. Because if you think about it, all those yellow there, if those two lots were already yellow, it wouldn't say it wouldn't tell us whether they're R1 or R2 or R3. So I think there needs to be more specificity, but I want to shut up and let.
I think you need to decide whether it's going to be R1 or R2 or R1 special. Because all you've said is it's going to be residential. So now I guess you could decide to make it, R2 or R1 special.
I lied. I'm not going to shut up yet. Because even when the CDP says you shall rezone third block of Sussex, use an example, that is, in my view, is not a dictate. It means that within 18 months, you will conduct a public hearing and to consider, but that it's not definitive, it has to happen. So I need clarification too.
So that is the right answer.
Yeah,
you have 18 months to go into the process, because if the comprehensive development plan said you shall rezone Sussex and you have an absolute obligation to do it, then the public hearing process would be a sham, right? So you have to initiate the process, and to the extent you go into the process in the public hearing and you hear something in the public hearing that says that was a horrible idea that we put in our comp plan, you would then go back to PLUS and say we'd like to re-amend our comp plan such that we don't have to rezone Sussex Street. So the public hearing process still has meaning. So I think Mr. LaSour is right in that you're under an 18-month clock now to get the process going, which you've already done, and we're going to have the public hearing today. But if you hear something during the public hearing that makes you say, the decision we made 10 minutes ago was awful, we should never rezone these, you could probably today vote to re-amend the future land use map back to a commercial designation.
Anybody else, please? Yes, ma'am. I'd like to identify yourself, relationship to the city, please. I'm sorry, we're going to help you. Matt?
down this way.
Variety today.
My name is, okay, we got it.
Maybe we need a high and a low.
My name is Bonnie Hardy, and I'm at, I own.
Yeah, you wrote a letter, I think.
Yeah, we wrote the letter, and my husband and I own property at 1022 and 1024 Scarborough Avenue Extended. We've lived there since '94, and we've always assumed that these lots were residential. We knew Mrs. Truitt, and we always figured that if that property did get developed, it might have been similar to Scarborough Square, and my question is for you is, if Scarborough Square people don't want to change their their commercial zoning to residential, what happens if they want to go back to commercial? Say if they want to tear that down and make it commercial at that point. What is the process? And do you have to go through public hearings for that? Because right now it's residential. It's C3, but it's all residential homes there. Now that we're asking the same thing here. Okay, so we have a C3 zoning, but we want it to be residential. We don't want to have Mrs. Truitt's house become a commercial zone, a commercial use, a high intense commercial use, such as what is being proposed, rather than a residence. You know, Scarborough Square are residences, even in the C3 zoning. So if they change their mind, if they said, I don't know why they wouldn't want to be residential, they're protecting themselves, but, you know, it's like everybody wants it both ways. They want to have, okay, I want to have a use that if I want to make it commercial, later on I can make more money, I get it. But what about the people that live there? We're all assuming we want to be in a residential neighborhood. I mean, I'd hate to see Scarborough Square become a high intense use commercial use there. And you're telling me this could possibly happen. And what do you do then?
Well, currently there is no process. Their code allows different tiers. It allows you, if you're in a commercial, to do tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 uses. And within that is residential. Do you want to take it over from there?
Well, what she's suggesting is exactly right. If Scarborough Square was to be demolished tomorrow, the commercial uses that are allowed within its commercial zoning designation could be constructed there. Through the public hearing or through the comprehensive development plan process, the Planning Commission and the commissioners could engage in a process to rezone that property to residential without having a request from the owners. That hasn't happened over the past while the 2020 comp plan was being implemented. But you're exactly right. If that was to go away tomorrow, it could be developed with some commercial use.
And what kind of, what rights to the residences of the street have then? Is it to go through a public hearing and you listen to the public, or?
Yeah, unfortunately, there would not be a public hearing if it redeveloped in a commercial use that's allowed in that zone. Although nobody from here from Scarborough Square is here to defend themselves, so I think probably stay focused on the two properties you're looking at, right?
Thank you, Bonnie.
Okay.
Come ahead.
Speak quickly. My name is Mark Longacre, and I'm the owner of the 1028B Scarborough Avenue Extended property.
B?
B, yes, one in the middle. And we have petitioned to change from C3 to R1. I wanted to address Ed's question on why we would do that and really limit our options a little more than we have right now, because we do already have a residential property on there, or a residential building on there. And the reason I did that is because when 20663, Rehoboth Auto, 20663 Coastal Highway, applied for a zoning change, we were very involved in the process, and it did go to the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission, when we met there, indicated that, wow, if you were R1, this would probably be different. Now, whether that was a correct recommendation or a correct assumption or not, that's what they said. And so, you know, after that meeting, and you can look at the timeline, I think it was an October meeting, and shortly thereafter, I applied for R1 because I felt it could have a direct impact on the Coastal Highway property behind us. So that's why I applied.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Anybody else? This is a public hearing. Just identify yourself, if you would, in relationship to the city.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Carlton Savage with Scaled Engineering. I am here representing Mr. Richard Marsh and his wife, Stephanie. I just want to speak a little bit about what you guys just did with changing the future land use map. And we completely supported that change there, because the main change gets changed when the properties would potentially get rezoned. That's when certain things would come into play, like setback changes and greater effects to the commercial property next door. Richard Marsh wants to be a good neighbor. He likes doing his business there in town. And we felt that, an R1 zoning would protect those properties more. However, we only supported that should, our rezoning be favorable as well. If not, it becomes a detriment to his property. So that's sort of why we didn't speak on behalf of anything further, but I will mention that the change that I see that would affect the commercial property, 20663 Coastal Highway, would be a setback from those properties, which currently doesn't exist, as well as potentials for screening. That would all happen in a site plan process. So just to give our piece of the puzzle here is, we're hopeful that we can be good neighbors. That does protect those properties a little further, but it does affect, as you start considering the rezonings, that change would affect that commercial property by putting further restrictions on it. So thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a provision in the city's zoning code that whenever residential abuts commercial, the commercial property has to provide a 5-foot buffer between the commercial property and the residential property. Currently, because it's commercial against commercial, that 5-foot buffer doesn't have to exist, but it would have to exist should you all choose to rezone these two properties to a residential designation.
Correct. Thank you.
City Solicitor, can I ask a question of the commercial property owner? Is that a fair thing to do?
I mean, I think it's fair to raise the question and somebody can answer it up here. Perhaps if not, they can choose to get back up and address it.
I think my question would be for Rehoboth Auto Repair is you've mentioned you want to be a good neighbor. What are some of the things that you're planning to do to be a good neighbor?
Yeah, I think I agree with the mayor. We're trying to focus on just the two residential properties now. Then we're gonna have the public hearing for the.
Okay, we're doing them separately.
Yeah.
I kind of thought we were doing them.
No.
Okay,
No,
gotcha.
we said if we can, we would like to
Understood.
segregate them so that we're doing the two residential ones, 1028A, 1028B, and naturally, since they're mirror requests,
Right.
we can do them together. If possible, we'd like to defer till after that decision. And if you find that they're intertwined, then and we have to violate that, then so be it.
Understood. I rescind my question.
Any other members of the public like to speak? Go ahead.
My name's Steve Thomas. I'm in the 1028C.
Yes.
So I
Talked
spoke
with you on the
Stan about
phone.
that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And to answer your question, the reason why I decided to stay commercial was strictly for a resale if I would, but I have no intent to resale. And I was going to join their designation to go to R1. However, I decided not to because of a resale. But my question is like, I heard you say about a 5-foot setback, which when you put, and I'm looking at the building requirements that were down on the bottom about a 10,000-foot structure, theoretically, it could be, right on my line, right? So
Correct.
So because I'm not residential, should I now go residential because of a 5-foot setback? Because, okay, they're going to have this L and it's going to be up against my line to 5 foot, which is, that's not being a good partner. So whenever you ask the question about, could you hear, it would be really nice for us to be able to make our minds, because I'm the neighbor of Mark, and then the next one down is A, and we talk. So it would be nice to hear what some of these development plans would be, if so approved, to go to C1, because obviously in the morning, because I'm along the main highway, I actually have a lot of road noise, but I also have debris and stuff like that coming down the road onto my property, and I know they do a good job, Rehoboth Auto, but I do get some debris of like gloves and different types of things from the auto shop that come into my yard. So, and I pick them up and along the highways, and you can go out there today and you can see it there today. So my question to you is like, what would they do if you do grant them C1? And the fact that I am commercial, do we see a buffer? Do we see trees? Do we see a wall? Do we see all those things? So that's my ask of the commissioners. and the
Let
mayor.
me address real quick, if you chose to join in, if you will, and seek a R1, I would need a formal letter. I would then need to go in front of the plus group. So you're talking about, and then we would have to conduct the same exact hearing to change the future land use map again. So just be aware that you don't have to make any decisions right away because we're kind of late in the process. But do be aware that it would add months to finalizing this process for your individual property, for instance.
And my intent is not to do that, but my intent is to say, could it be directly on the line and then a 5-foot setback and then around the, is that a possibility? That's what,
Yeah.
at some point, will we hear or see the plans of what Rehoboth Auto wants to do?
The answer is yes, it would be a zigzag buffer, if you will.
It could be, but just remember, Mayor, that these zoning decisions that you're making shouldn't be premised on any particular project proposal, because should Rehoboth Auto Mall go to C1, they can put anything that's allowable in the C1 zoning district on that property. So we don't know what they might do. They might be willing to talk a little bit when it's their turn and they're hearing about what they're proposing, but the zoning decision shouldn't be based upon any particular proposal.
And we can't require them to tell us exactly what they're doing. So that's important. We can't dictate that
I
we
have a
have to.
question, Mayor, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but while we're talking about this, is it fair for Glenn to describe what can be done with C1?
Well, when we got to that, we were going to put it on the screen
Okay.
and talk about it. So I don't know if we can wait a little bit.
And then my last question is that when I built my house and the process was underway, I had to go by all the requirements of being residential, even though I was zoned commercial. So, my builder made a mistake and took a tree out, and now I have 13 maple trees on my property that I'm not even allowed to take out, even though I'm still commercial and I'm residential. So my question is what type of restrictions will there be on if they go from C3 to C1, and who will oversee that process? Because right now, I spoke to the arborvitae and I have 4 maple trees that are this big that are going to be this big in a matter of years to come, and I'm not allowed to take them out unless they're dead, dying, or going to hurt something in the future. So who polices that once this process is underway if you approve it to C1?
So again, that relates more to the commercial properties, but the process would be that they would file an application with the city's building official, and to the extent that it is a commercial development that's consistent with something that's permissible under the code. If it's they call it a by right use. If it's a by right use and they're not asking to do anything special, vary setbacks or go higher than the allowable height limit. If it's a permissible commercial development, it's a straight zoning permit issuance from the zoning official. There's no public hearing process or anything like that. If they want to do something else that's not a by right use, then there'd be a process that would involve a public participation. But if it's a by right use, it would just be a simple application to the building official and he could approve it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Again, we're focusing the best we can on just the 2 residential ones. Anybody else last time before I close the public hearing? Public hearing portion dealing with the 2 residential properties, 1028A and 102.
Commercial properties asking to go residential.
Closing the public hearing portion of the meeting dealing with 1028A and 1028B. Leave it there. Thank you very much. Bring it back to the commissioners to decide what to do in this one instance. Certainly, if you need more information on the commercial one before you can make a decision, we can go further. But otherwise, if we have enough information, it would be prudent, I believe, to try to resolve this and act on it.
I'm happy to make a motion to move this along.
And Mayor, would you mind putting the ordinances up? Because perhaps you want to read from the draft ordinances, the title in making the motion.
And you sent me
Sorry
it
about that.
in Word, I think.
I did.
What am I
Just go
reading?
all the way down to the exhibits.
I think it starts at page 9.
Yeah, you've got them already.
Page 9. You want me to start reading it? Or
What do you?
Let's make sure it's the right one.
May 2nd.
1028A.
Yep. So it's Exhibit B.
Is this only 1028A, or can we combine?
This has them combined.
Yeah, you can combine them.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
They're not combined, but you can easily combine them.
Right. So you can make the motion as to both if you'd like.
Mayor, I move to amend the Rehoboth Beach zoning map referred to at Chapter 270, Section 270-7 of Municipal Code of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 2001 as amended, and the zoning district boundaries as referred to at Chapter 270, Section 270-8 of the Municipal Code of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, as amended by changing the zoning designation of the properties located at 228A and 1028A and 1028B, Sussex County parcel numbers 33-20.09-5.02 and 334-20.09-5.01 respectively, from C3 Secondary Commercial District to R1 Single Family Residential District. This ordinance shall take effectively immediately upon its adoption by a majority vote of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Patrick Gossett to amend the Rehoboth Beach zoning map as noted in the ordinance, changing the zoning designation of the property located at 1028A Scarborough Avenue Extended and the property located at 1028B Scarborough Avenue Extended from C3 Secondary Commercial District to R1 Single Family Resident District. Is that clear enough? Yes. Is there any further discussion?
Just that in your voting, Mayor, I would appreciate it if, I guess we'll presume that any of your comments relate to both the properties. If you're making a comment that relates to only one of the properties, just say so, okay?
For discussion, I guess this is similar to me for the future land use map, but what weighs most heavily for me is the existing usage. And we'll see what some other rationale it comes up with. We're going to poll commissioners individually, starting with Commissioner Legree.
The existing use of both these parcels is residential, and for it to be zoned residential will affect the sale and purchase of the lot of that property in the future. And I think that's a residential neighborhood. They're asking for residential zoning, and they're living on as a residential structure on the property. So I vote yes.
Mayor, I vote aye. It should be, I'm in favor of zoning it how it's currently being used, so I vote aye.
Commissioner Gossett?
I also vote aye, based on use of the property as residential, as is the streetscape of that entire neighborhood. And also, it follows through on with compliance of the 2020, recently passed 2020 CDP, which outlines impact of commercial on residential within the city.
Commissioner Marker?
I vote aye for the reasons that Commissioner Gossett expressed.
And the chair votes aye. Oh,
Stop that.
Commissioner
that.
Sharp, you're next.
I vote aye. My previous comments apply to both properties, and I agree with all commissioners and previously stated rationale.
Sometimes the chair has it easiest. I vote aye for all the reasons my colleague gave. Seriously, and for what I said earlier. Thank you very much. With that does not close the public hearing. We're still in a public hearing format, but what we'll be addressing next is the public hearing in the matter of 20663 Coastal Highway, which is also known as Rehoboth Auto Repair. The tax parcel number is given in the agenda. Their request for their parcel is from C3 Secondary Commercial to C1 Central Commercial District. Before, I'm going to bring it up here to the commissioners first, and then we'll go to the member. Actually, do we want him to make a presentation first?
When you open the public hearing, the applicant is welcome to come up first.
Okay, so we'll do that. What I'd like to start at, Patrick, you sent me a list of the zones. I don't know if you want me to review it or you can.
Based for informational purposes for knowledge of commissioners and the public as to allowed uses within C1 versus C3, and also the 3 separate tiers which are outlined in all of our zoning codes uses.
How about if I start, if you look at the screen, let's start with the C3, if you don't mind. We'll review that. We'll review what is allowable in a C3 district. Patrick, I'll start off, but I'm going to turn it over to you in a second. The C3 district is to include commercial areas where certain uses are not permitted in buildings over a certain size. In the tier 1, you can do residential, right? You've got mid-rise apartment, you've got tourist room, you've got a tier 2, it could be a hotel. Tier 3, it could be a fire station or parking lot. Patrick, you have that yellow. Do you want to explain?
Just again, the second was referred to earlier by one of the citizens, that limited to 10,000 square feet of gross floor area. And the list A through L is there of what are the permitted uses within that. And conversely, what is a permitted use, if you jump back up to C1, again, within the tier 3.
And there were this tier 3 down here also. Right. For all these things. So now if we go up to C1.
Correct.
Here, so which of these are above and beyond what can be done in C3?
But basically what we're speaking of, and Solicitor, if you'll confirm or deny this in that regards, but if you scroll down a little bit under tier 3, it's point S as in Sam, public or commercial garages, repair shops, gas and oil service stations are permitted use in C1, but are not a permitted use in C3, which that property is currently zoned as a C3 within the city, and the request by the owner is to go to a C1, which would allow public or commercial garages, repair shops, gas and oil services stations, as I interpret it. I don't know if that is in conflict or parallel to the building and licensing department or the solicitor, but that's how I'm basing the decision tree to go on here.
I think that's right, and I think the idea is if they were to extend their business onto that property, they'd have to have this zoning designation to be able to do that.
So if you don't mind, let me review real quick. They have existing property there that they use, right? That's abutting Route 1 also, that I believe is C1 zoning, right? So their current services there are commercial garage, repair shop, gas and oil service station type thing. They fit in that category. For the existing property that's zoned C1, on the existing property that's zoned C3, they're not allowed to do what they're doing on the C1 property. So that's the question for me is, what is the value of allowing them to upgrade, if you will, from C3 to C1? What is the impact on neighbors, et cetera? Did you have anything else you wanted to point out in here, Patrick?
I'm not necessarily, I'm just, if you can refresh my memory, the intent of the expansion or the change in that zoning, do we know in fact that it falls into this category of expanding to the public or commercial garages, repair shops, gas and oil service stations? So.
But again, they don't have to tell us what they're doing. They're
Correct.
just seeking the zoning
So
designation.
that's what I'm trying to
And then-
establish, is that we do not know for a fact that that's what they intend to do.
Right.
But if the change in zoning from a C3 to a C1 is granted, then that is a permissible use on that lot, which is currently residential use, not zone, but use.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Nope. Anybody on this side? Commissioner Legree?
I'm trying to remember what the CDP says about C3 abutting, R, abutting residential properties.
Just removal of adverse impacts, or if you can.
Yeah, I don't recall if it says anything specific, but
Well, I believe one of the action items, to paraphrase, consider rezoning any currently permitted commercial uses or categories of use that have clear potential for adverse impacts on residential neighborhoods.
Which seems to be what would happen if that's rezoned.
Well, again, I think we're,
yeah,
if I may, we're kind of second guessing that.
No matter what, no matter what they decide to do, I think
Correct.
that would be a possibility.
That's primarily the only difference in C1 and C3 is the repair shop, gas,
Yeah.
and oil service stations. As I understand it, and again, Mr. Janus, you may want to have a comment on that. If I'm interpreting that correctly, I don't want to do your job for you by any means, but that's how my brain is working. Is that correct? Yes, sir? It is.
All right. If there's nothing else up here, I want to go to the members of the public. Would anybody like to speak? Remember, we've put to bed the two residential properties, 1028A and B. We're looking at Rehoboth Auto Repair with address 20663 Coastal Highway. And is there anybody who would like to speak? It might be easier for you to, yeah. Just make sure that microphone's 2 or 3 inches from you. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. Once again, Carlton Savage with Scaled Engineering, representing the owner of the Rehoboth Auto Repair at 20663 Coastal Highway in Rehoboth Beach. Today, I'd like to really, I think you guys understand the gist of what we'd like to do, obviously based on our existing business. We would like to expand that existing business, and the difference between what would be allowable under C3 versus C1, you just looked at the differences, and basically you are correct. There's a couple other ones that I don't have the exact list, but I think one is the gymnasium and health club, the commercial tennis courts, and I believe there's a billiard pool and bowling establishment. So there were a couple other ones up there, but mainly the big difference between the two is the public or commercial garage aspect. The big thing that I think also changes between the C1 and C3 that might have concern would be the building size. The C3 district would restrict a use or a building, so multiple buildings, I believe, could be built of larger size, but a building itself would be restricted to 10,000 square feet. That's how I would read that. In the C1 zone, that restriction will come off, and more things such as parking setbacks, and loading zones would all dictate what that site plan looks like and the maximal building size. I will point out that the property itself is 11,040 square feet. So we are not talking about a massive commercial property such as the shopping center to the rear. This property is 11,000 square feet, and then we now have setbacks on the side and rear based on the change of zone that was just approved. That would restrict that even further, and pretty much your footprint, by the time you do your front setback, your rear setback, and a portion of the side, we'd be somewhere around 9,000 square feet of buildable land. So even if you were to be able to build a building 4 stories high, 9,000 square feet, without any parking or any other thing on the property, you could get to a 36,000 square foot building. I can tell you Mr. Marsh has no intention of doing that. I really don't know how you would achieve that with parking and different things as you move to the uses, but that is the rationale that I came up with looking at the property. With that, Mr. Marsh currently on his property has a total square footage of buildings of 6,081 square feet. So as you compare the two in the uses, I'm looking at it thinking out loud that there is really not, if the commercial garage is the use that we're to be presented here, which is a difference, it would most likely be a much smaller building than what could be done under either use, C1 or C3, given the same scenario. So if he were to duplicate what he has on this property, we'd still only get to another 6,000 square feet, which wouldn't even be possible. Mr. Marsh needs parking. That's a big part of what he needs. The parking was why he bought the property to begin with. He needed extra parking for his existing use, and overflow in a parking lot. So that was the main reason he built it. But then he realized that if I needed a couple extra service bays, technically that's not permitted under the C3. That's where the rezoning application came in, and that's why we stand here today. As we heard the other residential properties next door, obviously when Mr. Marsh bought the property, he thought they would stay commercially zoned, which would leave him with no impact to his property. With the rezoning today, obviously that does impact his setbacks. As Mr. Mendelis mentioned, there would be a 5-foot buffer of some sort and potential screening along those two properties, as well as the property in the rear. Not really sure how we got to this 3 or 4 lot subdivision, but there is a garage already in the back corner. That garage is only 2.9 feet, give or take, from the back line. So technically it's non-conforming as it sits there today. With any rezoning, the hope normally, except for the ones you just heard, would be to renovate, improve the lot based on its zoning, and maximize the ability of the landowner that bought it. With the application going from C3 to C1, yes, it would be commercially redeveloped, there is quite a few provisions in the CDP mentioning that is a goal of the city, is to redevelop commercial properties appropriately, also while not impacting neighboring properties. So that is, depending on how you look at that language, what you as a board just did does protect those properties quite a bit. It puts in stone that buffer between the residential and the commercial, which is why we chose not to fight that application, because being good neighbors, you want that. You want that buffer, and this guarantees that buffer. So I don't know what the site plan will look like. It really comes down to a whole nother process. But I can tell you the picture of what would be done there, the building size, typically commercial garages are 1 story. You don't park cars on top of cars on top of cars. So you get a 1-story building for the most part. Even if you were to cover the entire buildable area, you would not get to that 10,000 square foot number. So that to me, that worry goes out unless you go to a different use, which is not our intention at all. So that would be something that bulk-wise would be, in my opinion, thrown out unless you went to a different use. And from an impact standpoint, a commercial garage, while it sounds terrible if you're a residential next door, actually could be a very good use for this property. There's a lot of road noise. right now, they hear a lot of that road noise because there's nothing behind them. There's a residential house. It is odd to have residential properties adjacent to a highway, such as you have there, but they built there, they chose to build there, and that became their choice. You know, so the road noise is something that they bought into when they bought. A building near their property would block a lot of that road noise. So, and it also being one story, they're not 42 feet tall typically. So that is a big protection. Looking out your backyard at a 42-foot building, whether it's C1, C3, that stays permissible. A single-story garage would be a much better thing to look at, in my opinion, standing here today. The garage bays would most likely face towards his existing property, so all the noise would be directed away from those properties if there weren't open garage doors and things. If you don't find favorable for the rezoning, then obviously Mr. Marsh will use it as parking and different things that he's permitted to use under the C3. And then potentially someday it gets redeveloped under what a C3 would be possible. But from an impact standpoint, I view it as a very little impact upzoning for that change of use that would be able to be done. Yeah, so I think I mentioned on it, but the building height is not something it would change. The only difference is the bulk size. Then I had a couple notes from the CDP, because I know that is important when you consider the rezoning. Is what does the CDP say? Obviously, that's a guidance document that somebody else has prepared. You were part of it, but it is very important in your findings. Before today, the future land use map of 2045 in the comprehensive plan showed that this property, as well as the other three, were to be zoned commercially and to be used commercially as technically a future use. Previously, when they used those properties as residential, it actually went against what the CDP said. But that was the best use at the time. That was what the property owners chose to do. The CDP mentions redeveloping commercial properties quite a few times, obviously with the lesser impact. To me, the difference between C3 and C1, given a small size property, doesn't change the impacts. It's a commercially zoned property, and 90% of the uses are the same. So that I see little impact there. I didn't see any mention of this property particularly in the CDP. It is part of the school zone, or sorry, the school view section of town, and very little reference to this property. Actually, any of these properties really exist. They talk about the neighborhood, and then they reference the commercial shopping center, but they don't give a whole lot of guidance. Reading through that, I didn't get a whole lot of guidance as to what this property should be developed as or not developed as. With that, I'm going to turn over to see if Mr. Marsh has any comments. Or
Covered everything.
so we
He said.
we hope you do act favorably in our rezoning. We do understand the reason that the residential properties would like to be rezoned residentially, and that gives them the buffer that we always intended to give them. You know, we just would hope that you would consider our application favorably. Thank you.
Any questions of the applicant's representatives by the commissioners?
I think I have a question, but I'm pondering of how to phrase it. So does anybody else have one while I ponder?
We'll give you 10 seconds.
Okay, let me give it I'll take a swing at it. In the way you were just describing things, can you understand or even answer this question? And it's fair to say I don't know what you're talking about if that's what you hear. How does redevelopment of a property with a residential home sitting on it for decades create no impact?
I'm going to try to answer it differently.
I mean, does that make sense of what I'm trying to get at?
Yes, I see what you're saying. Looking at it, assuming that a residentially used property is something better than a commercial property. When you look at it, we need businesses in town. We need service stations in town. A community has to be a whole object. It can't just be a town full of houses, and it can't be a town full of businesses. The reason people want to come to the town is because they have restaurants. We have service repair shops. Without a service repair shop, you can't get your car fixed before you leave town. So it is a very important thing to have a mixture of uses within town. Somewhere before us, other minds believe that these properties should be zoned commercially and used commercially. Mr. Marsh bought this property with the assumption that he would be able to build his and extend his existing commercial business commercially into this property. So from an impact standpoint, the 3 residents that did buy next door, if they would have looked into it, they would have also realized that there was potential for impact to their property. Whether they were guided improperly or whether they just chose they would take the chance, I do believe that they knew, looking at their property, that it was zoned commercial and that this property was zoned commercial. What I was really alluding to is the impact going from C1 to C3 is negligible. The real difference is the building size. And with a small property, the building size won't come into play. In my experience, it'd be very tough to build something over 10,000 square feet on this property and still account for the parking, the stormwater management, everything that would go into it.
Okay, so just to narrow your answer, and maybe my question is that your impact was relevant to the commercial properties, not the residential properties.
Sure.
That's the nugget of what you were talking
Correct.
about.
They had the same option. They could have built something C3 on their property. Obviously, from a residential standpoint, yes, it seems less impactful.
Okay.
But from a commercial standpoint, there was no impact.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant's representative or applicant? No, thank you very much, gentlemen. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? Come ahead. You can do the stand-up microphone if it's easier for you. You can.
I need Miss Lomax. Is it okay to put something down here and have it
Sure,
projected?
State your name and relationship and then do your thing.
Sure thing. I'm Terry Ballard. I live at 1026 Scarborough Avenue Extended. My side yard is backs up to Rick's non-conforming cinder block garage, which I actually would prefer than probably more than what he's probably proposing. But I won't take too much time, I don't think. I'd like to go through a brief timeline about so much of what you all have been spending time and attention on for really better part of a year. Okay, I'd just like to review briefly the history and the evolution of our neighborhood and share a few visuals with you. As Commissioner Markert posed, what does the future hold? I believe it was Commissioner Markert. This is what the past has held. So I just kind of wanted to go through this real quick. In the late 1950s, there was a bungalow house at 20663 on Coastal Highway that was built. In 2015, Truitt's Choice subdivision for Roger Truitt was put together, and he had that subdivided and went through the Planning Commission and the city to have that done, and made actually a total of 3 lots and expanded the property that Rick eventually bought.
Excuse me, Ann, can you enlarge that just one more time? And then Terry, center it or starting left to right, and you just might have to scoot it once. There we go.
I'm not going to get all my time. I'll have to move it as I go. But okay, on April 2016, Jim and I purchased our property at 1026 Scarborough Avenue Extended, and it was completed in 2017. In October of 2016, 1028 Scarborough Avenue, which has now just been rezoned to R1, was purchased and built and completed in 2017. In August of 2017, 1028B was purchased and built and completed. I have 2018, but I don't know if that's correct. It may have been 2017. In August of 2017, 1028C, the house that, and the property that Steve owns, was purchased and built and completed in 2018. In 2018, the revision of the Rehoboth CDP was begun, and 12, I believe, drafts were adopted. Were done, and then the CDP was adopted in 2022. In August of 2019, 20663 Coastal Highway was purchased by the Marshes and later transferred to their Ocean Venture Properties, LLC. I got a picture here that I think is representative of our neighborhood. And if maybe you could zoom out just a little bit. Just a little bit more. That's probably it, yeah. So at the top of the picture, you can see Silver Lake, and this is Scarborough Avenue Extended right here. Huh? That it doesn't show it in this picture. Oh. So from Silver Lake at 2002, the house on the lake, all the way to Route 1 now, we have either R1 zoned improved properties like these lots, or we have single-family residential houses all the way for the first time since the 1940s. From the lake to Route 1, we have single-family residential houses. So I kind of just want to give you an idea. This is the Ocean Baymart property, which is almost 8 acres of already zoned C1 property that surrounds the Marshes property on 3 sides. Real quick here. This is just an overhead shot. This is my house right here, 1028A, 1028B, 1028C. This is the little bungalow house that backs up to our house, owned by Rick. And here is the street, or the pathway that's owned by Ocean Baymart that separates Rehoboth Auto Repair and the house here. So what I kind of want you to look at here is what we've always kind of sort of felt like was that this was a block of houses that we lived next to, and what we look at. I individually invited all of the commissioners and the mayor to come go to my backyard, and 3 of you, to your credit, got back in touch with me, which I really appreciate, and 1 of you, to my knowledge, showed up, so I really appreciate that.
Terry, we're going to want you to give Ann all your hard copies there.
Okay, I can do that.
She needs a record of what's put up on the screen.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
Won't be too much longer. This is Scarborough Avenue right here. This is my street. This is my house. And if you go down my garage, that's or down my driveway, that's my garage. This is 1028A, 1028B. This is the bungalow house and the garage that the Marshes own right here. So it's all looks and feels and acts like a residential block. That's what it has felt like ever since we've lived in the neighborhood. Okay, all right, it won't be too much longer. Part of what we feel like is important are the tenets of the comprehensive development plan, but a big part of what I'm uncomfortable with right now is the safety of having an auto repair shop that I can already see and feel, which is already back there, come even closer, literally, into our backyard. I'd like to talk about something that happened in 2005. The owners of the Fountain Motel allowed the Lewis, Rehoboth, and Bethany rookie firefighters to train for putting fires out with a controlled burn/demolition of the motel. As reported by the Cape Gazette, this ultimately resulted in water from the fire fight backing up into the basement of a Stokely Avenue extended home and also the cafeteria of the Rehoboth Elementary School. The city's insurance company covered the cost of the cleanup for both of those unfortunate events. What the article doesn't mention was the fact that the heat from that fire leapt across my neighbor's asphalt driveway and melted the siding of the house at 1025 Scarborough Avenue Extended. It's the house right across the street from me. Any of y'all that were around remember that. I remember looking at the siding myself. It nearly burned that house down because the embers got up into the eaves of that house. I'm not comfortable with the eligibility to go to C1 from C3 for 20663 and the uses it would allow by right, such as an undertaker parlor with associated supplies, a gymnasium, or public commercial garage, repair shop, and gas and oil service station. I just think it's something we really have to look at. It's really not a safe thing, I don't think. Last but not least, I think you all are familiar with that. It is the first subsection of the zoning code. And if you read it, it says, for the purpose of promoting health, safety, morals, or the general welfare of the city of Rehoboth Beach, the following regulations or restrictions, together with the zoning map, are adopted. The purpose of these regulations and restrictions is to lessen congestion in the streets, to secure safety from fire, panic, and other dangers, to promote health and the general welfare, to provide adequate light and air, which is something I'm really worried about, because when I look out my top window, I see Rick's pole barns now. If they come into the backyard or into the backyard of three close properties, I will literally be able to throw a pebble from my Weber grill in about a second. So we want to prevent the overcrowding of land to avoid undue concentration of population, to facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, water, etc. We want to encourage the most appropriate use of the land throughout the municipality. I like Rick and Stephanie. We've been good neighbors to them, and they've been good neighbors to us where they are. I think we've been sleeping and breathing as a neighborhood, including the house at 20663 that they purchased after everybody else purchased their land and built their properties. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Be sure to leave your drawings with Ann if you would.
Okay, thanks.
We're still in the public hearing portion. Is there anybody else that would like to speak up? Identify yourself again, Mark, and who you are and all that.
Yes, again, I'm Mark Longacre, and I'm the property owner at 1028B Scarborough Avenue Extended. And I did submit a letter. I think that's part of everybody's package. I submitted it on Monday, and thank you for considering that. In the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all of that, but I do have opposition to the request to rezone 20663, and furthermore, I really think this group should consider rezoning that to R1 as well for some of the reasons Terry just pointed out, and I think it's well within your power to do that. And in fact, you've actually committed that you will do that in the 2020 CDP. And I know some of you have, I have that outlined in my, in my letter, what provisions would provide for that. So I'd ask that you consider that. The last thing I didn't include in my letter that I did want to expand upon here is that, when you consider these rezoning changes, there's financial aspects too, and that's the big elephant in the room. that I didn't want to hit on my letter, but I do want to point out here. And that's, there's going to be winners and losers financially when you have to make these kind of decisions. And, you know, in essence, what you're doing is, you know, really when you have to make this decision, taking money from one person and giving it to another. And there's instances where I think that's really required and important. Instances of safety, or where you may be, you know, improving the actual community, building a park, something that's going to be good for the actual city. You know, in this case, it's you know, taking from one property owner and giving to another for-profit business, and I think there's no way you could consider this type of zoning rezoning request. Yeah, I thought the property was R1. I did, Carlton, and you know, I guess maybe Roger Truitt got me on that one, but I think he got you too, because you know you bought it as C3 and now you want it to be C1. So I guess he got us all, but that's it.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Mark.
Yep.
Mark, do I recall, maybe Carlton knows, do I recall reading something that there is an access from Scarborough Avenue extended to this 20663 Coastal Highway? Is there a drive or something there?
Yeah, it was in Terry's. It's not in my property.
It was a horseshoe driveway. That was my driveway that connected, that was Roger's mother's house that I bought, that went to the house that he grew up in.
Just a driveway, so it's
Just
not
a
an
horseshoe
easement,
driveway.
not anything.
Yeah, and when we purchased that was cut off in the transaction, so that was no longer there.
All right, thank you
No,
very much.
none of the other properties have a connection.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I'll go up here.
Just reintroduce yourself, Bonnie.
Bonnie Hardy, 1024, 1022 Scarborough Avenue Extended. I have to agree with Mark on this. I think, put this down. I have to agree with Mark on this too. I think they bought the property, and I think we all felt that this was always residential. From 1950s on, you can see, from we put there in 90s, it was always residential. Mrs. Truitt was there. I don't think we ever thought there would be anything commercially put there, such as a garage, a service station, or whatever. I think that, like I said before, if anything was going to be there, it was going to be developed residentially. And my question is, why do we allow this? Why do we allow somebody to come here and have a C3 zoning and then change and then put residences? And why not change it back? Why can they have it both ways? Either it's residential or it's commercial. I mean, because it is. I mean, these three people, 1028, A, B, C, have put a lot of money into those properties. And I think they all were under the understanding this was a residential neighborhood, and it is residential. And then now you want to put commercial? Why can't the Rehoboth Auto buy property from Monagle? It's C1 there, isn't it? Can't they go back into that? That's C1. C1. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I just don't want to see this. I don't think they should. And I think Mark's right, that Mrs. Truitt's house should be residential. And it should be all rezoned residential.
Thank you, Bonnie. Walter, is there anybody else that wants to speak? I'd like to queue up. Okay, now, well, what?
Good afternoon, Walter Brinningham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. We moved to Rehoboth in '86, and it was always the Truitt house. I'll go to the very end. The alley is probably a good separation. I appreciated the picture of when the fire company, under a controlled burn, ideally the best circumstances they could have, and the sewer line did not get plugged up, and it put water in the basement of the school and many other places in Schoolview, the development proper. Um, I was around the fire company when, I believe under PEP-UP, I hope that's correct, owned the gas station, and they had a leak, and literally gasoline was coming through the south wall and into the basement, and we cut the electric off, and they solved the problem. They put in a petroleum reclamation system and made the house whole, but nonetheless, I think this is bad, or excuse me, I don't think this is as good as it can be. I think we had good families from the Truitts and good families from the Marshes. I think the people are all good. There is no way that this property, what I know as Ocean Bay Mardamico, is going to be ever worth less. Somebody could always come in and do it, but everything in this discussion has been about the Marshes. And properties are sold every day of the week in Rehoboth. I inject that when the Atlantic Sands was sold at the last minute, they stopped and they turned around and bought the corporation. They didn't buy the property. What an attorney can do, they can undo. And I think the one thing that to protect this is to maybe let the house be a C3, a garage or something like that. We have no more gas stations in Rehoboth. We don't need one. We got everybody else dealing gas. Let it be a service station. Let them use it for a garage. But go to C1 is wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Anybody else? Anybody else have something new to add, please? We need your name again and.
My name is Steve Thomas. I'm the owner of 1028C.
Thank you, Tom.
And if, like Mark was saying, if you folks would decide to do residential and make that, I would then petition to go to residential to make that a total community, because then it would make my property residential with the rest. But the reason, like I said, and like you asked, Edward, I kept mine commercial because of the situation. However, you know, as I listen to Mark and Jim and my neighbors, I agree with them, like they are saying about pushing money around, and to say, not that they don't do a great job there, but if you allow from C3 to C1, then their property becomes very valuable very quickly, because when we had a conversation after the first meeting when I came here and spoke, we had a conversation, I'm like, well, what happens if someone else would come in and offer you like a $20 million to say, hey, you know, we want to put Chick-fil-A or whatever place would go in there, what's going to stop them at that point? So to sell, and then we're stuck with that behind us. So, you know, like Bonnie said, they could go to the other direction and purchase from that Commonwealth in there to go to C1. So why are they coming towards our direction and down our street? So just to reiterate what they're saying, I agree with them.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? You have something new?
Yeah, I do. Something old and something new. The something old, I guess, is buying with the assumption that you can do something that it's not zoned for. You know, I tend to take a different approach to buying property as I research it before I buy it, not ask to have it fixed to what I hoped I could do. So, you know, when I bought my property, I knew Rick would not be able to use that property for C1 purposes. We researched the zoning of the properties, not only of our own, but the ones that we're next to. And, you know, we felt like we had, you know, some vulnerability for it being used for maybe, you know, a retail store, or a dentist's office, or a doctor's office or something for C3, up to 10,000 square feet, according to zoning. We knew it could not be used for, you know, gas stations or auto repair. There are commissioners who have said, oh, I vote for a particular zoning because it's been being used this way. And I've heard, you know, other cases, a lot of discussion, like, was this a legal non-conforming use? Was it a grandfathered non-conforming use? How did we know if it was legal or illegal? Should we just let them do it because they've been doing it for 10 years and nobody knew about it? There are a lot of garages all over town. A lot of your neighbors have garages. Some of them fix their cars in their garages. Guess what? If you rezone something based on how it's been being used, guess what zoning they get? It's not an R1 special, it's not an R1, it's not an R2, it's not in C3, it's not in C2. It's C1. So if you vote because, oh gosh, that's what they've been doing, they've been fixing cars back there, we'll just rezone it based on how it's been used in the past. They get C1. How nice. What a nice path. You know, what a nice path for the city to create for people who want to rezone something to C1. Fix cars back there, don't tell anybody. Then has to have it rezoned and get the commissioners who vote for it, because it's always been done this way, to vote for it to go to C1. You can put it right in the middle of any block you want. Just, you know, fix cars back there, don't tell anybody, and then let a few people know. So, you know, that's one point. The other point I thought I was going to make, I forgot, but there's a very important one I need to make. Oh, Mark was saying just sort of as far as, and Terry too, public health, public safety, fire, you know, dealing with congestion. We're balancing this against the public welfare need for auto service, auto repair, gas stations. Well, they're not selling gas. So, you know, the argument that, you know, people can't drive beyond the city to get gas doesn't really work in this case, because they're not planning to do that. And we have lots of Wawas and Royal Farms around, and it's not really that big of an issue. So it's more auto repair. You know, do we really need auto repair in town? Does it need to be there? Or could people drive a couple miles or go to Lewis or Milton or Salisbury or Dover, you know, if their car dealership is there, and get their car repaired there maybe? And guess what? We're not asking them to close the repair base. We haven't gone there. Terry did the timeline, and he didn't really show, well, Rehoboth Auto has been there. We haven't told them to shut down. We haven't told them they can't repair cars in Rehoboth. We haven't said residents in Rehoboth can't. We're talking about a big scale operation. We're talking about now the possibility of it being bought out by, you know, Costco Home Repair, 10, 12 bays, you know, and bringing people in from Milton and Dover. And, you know, it doesn't help congestion.
Forgive me, but we need to get back on track. We're specifically looking at whether or not to consider the change in zoning there.
Okay.
I feel like you're going outside the bubble here.
Okay. You're weighing in the zoning code, and it's in your code, and it's in the state code. And you should focus on it, because it's what the courts will focus on when this gets appealed, if it gets appealed. And it's your balancing of general welfare versus public health, public safety, fire risks. So what I'm saying is, if you vote for C1, you're asking them to bring toxic chemicals up to Steve's property line, potentially 42 feet in the air. You know, they can basically shoot fire onto his house from there. Against the need for auto repair in town, the general welfare interest. And, you know, there's something in the code. It's in the state code. It's in the city code, and it's called a protest or a butter's rights. And, you know, Mark kind of mentioned that the people that are right next to this property are the ones that bear the cost of it. You know, if you feel like it's such a benefit that people be able to repair this volume of cars within the city of Rehoboth Beach and not go across the street to Sussex County outside of Rehoboth or Dewey. But if it needs to be in the city, and that's really that much of an interest, you know, those of us who are right next to this property are the ones who really bear the cost. So fortunately, you know, the state of Delaware is one of the 20 states that recognizes this protest procedure, and Rehoboth has it in your code in section 270-87. I don't see it used a lot, but if you can get 20% of the basically adjacent within 100 feet properties to sign a protest, then instead of a majority vote of the authority, it takes 3/4 vote of the authority. So
Yeah, that's good to know after the fact, but I don't know.
it's
that
not
it
after
hel-
the fact.
It helps us. right
It
this
helps us.
moment.
It's essential right now that I bring this to your attention, because you have a draft ordinance that you did not link from today's agenda, that you buried in the agenda from May, from the workshop meeting and the other May meeting. I've been holding this protest, even though we have 8 signatures on it, because we did not know what ordinance would be put forward today at this meeting or how this would be conducted. It has been smoke and mirrors for us as far as how this was going to move forward, and whether someone would make one motion to do everything, whether you would go and follow some of the recommendations of my neighbors to, instead of going to commercial zoning, to actually go residential zoning. We would not have opposed that. We would not have filed a protest.
Thank you, Jim.
So the most important thing I have really is a change to Section 3 of the proposed ordinance. And it says, this ordinance shall take effect immediately upon its adoption by a majority vote of the commissioners of the city of Rehoboth Beach. Because of this protest, it needs to be an affirmative vote to rezone this to C1 by 3/4 of the commissioners in order to pass this request. And the reason I felt like, and I'm sorry that I might have come across a little bit strong or a little bit defensive, but I don't know the law well enough to know what happens when you say it's effective immediately upon its adoption. If somehow you all had voted before this, then you would have said, it's already effective. There's nothing you can do. So I felt like there was some urgency in getting it in front of you before you actually voted on this.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? If not, we're going to close the public portion of this second public portion of the meeting and turn it back to the commissioners. Glenn, did you?
I'm looking at the state law right now, so I want to be able to quote it as well. It's very similar to what we have in our city code. In our city code, Section 27087 says, it's titled Protest Against Proposed Change. It says, if a protest against any change is signed by the owners of 20% or more of the area of lots included in the proposed change, or of 20% of the owners of the area of the lots adjacent thereto extending 100 feet therefrom, or of 20% of the owners of the area of the lots directly opposite thereto extending 100 feet back from the street frontage of such opposite lots, the amendment shall not become effective except by the favorable votes of 3/4 of all the members of the commission. So I did anticipate the possibility of this happening, and I have a chart that designates which lots would need to be signatories to trigger one of these requirements that it be a supermajority vote. And the signers of this petition, I think, do satisfy the requirement that a change in zoning here would require a supermajority vote of 3/4 of the members of the commission. So to the extent you move forward and vote today, it will require a 3/4 majority vote of the commissioners to effectuate the change that's been requested.
So out of 6, supermajority is? No, wait a minute, Tom. Wait a minute, Tom. Supermajority is how many out of 6 commissioners that are here? 4?
3/4 of all the members of the commission, so it's 3/4 of all 7, which would be 6, right?
3/4
Better get a
of
calculator.
7 equal 21/4.
Right. 0.75 times 7 is 5.25, so you'd have to round up to 6, and the requirement is six
take
pauses.
6.
Solicitor, does that include 1027? And if it does include, I'm assuming that 1027 is in that 100-foot radius. Does that include all of the property owners on that property?
1027 being the, Rehoboth.
That's not within 100 feet, I don't believe. Yeah, I'm talking about the complex, the townhouse complex.
1029.
Not within
Right.
100 feet.
Yeah,
But that's not within 100 feet.
that's what they're. This.
Bless you.
Right.
So there's no way 100 feet, so it would not.
Within 100 feet.
Yeah, the proposed change is 20% of the owners of the area.
All lots. So this is, these are the areas that I think I would say that the street is more than 50 feet, and that lot, this is within 100 feet.
Good. Tom, you want to?
Tom Gaynor, property owner in Rehoboth. I don't have a dog in this race, but there's something that just doesn't sit right from a due process point of view about a petition being presented to you in real time that he doesn't have the opportunity to counter or even investigate or even authorize or even validate signatures that then is going to change a fundamental expectation of a potential participant in a process, the rules of which changed in real time. That doesn't sit right. From a procedural standpoint, Glenn, I would encourage you to think about what's about to happen and the fairness of it for all parties involved. This frankly should be tabled with that new information and picked up in another meeting.
Tom, let me interrupt you, just say, because I agree with you. So we've only just been given this petition. I'm suggesting that we need time to evaluate it. And I would like to close the public hearing and continue this at a future meeting date.
So that we don't have to go through the noticing process again, why don't you announce at the next, you'll continue the public hearing during the July regular meeting? Do you think that's appropriate? Or do you think you're going to schedule something sooner?
The July regular meeting. Yeah, no, I think that would be appropriate. They've been very patient, so another month. Then we'll hopefully have a full council here, so that might help matters as well. But this is very critical. We've got to make sure that we dot the i's, cross the t's. Any objections by the commissioners?
None for me.
So officially, can I officially close the public hearing portion?
Why don't you recess the public hearing? But you can close, you can recess it and then to be reconvened during the July.
Okay,
regular
so we're
meeting.
going to recess the public hearing portion of this so that we can reconvene likely at the July regular meeting and be able to have public hearing again. But what that saves us from doing is having to publish in the newspaper and all that again.
And before we move to another topic, Mayor, Does this require a vote, or this is just what we're going to do?
Yeah.
Unless, without objection, I think you can just move
Without
forward.
objection. I need a clarification on something, and maybe it's just me, but I have become very confused in the last 25 minutes of what's been going on, and I want to make sure that I have absolute clarity as we move forward. There seems to be, I keep hearing as if we have the authority to change something from a current C3 to residential.
No.
I thought I kept hearing a plea that we could make this residential. Did I hear that incorrectly?
You couldn't do it in conjunction with this proceedings. It hasn't been noticed that way
Correct.
whatsoever.
I just didn't want, I didn't want myself to leave here without a clarification, and especially if I heard it, if I misheard it, I didn't want anyone else to think we had the power in this setting to do something that I did not believe we had.
The key, the power in this setting
Yes.
is no.
Thank you. Okay.
We do otherwise,
Yes.
but there's different conditions and different advertisements, and we'd have to change the future zoning map possibly, and all this. All right. So we made some progress, we just didn't get to the conclusion we'd hoped to. Thank you very much. We're going to go on to the next item of.
Does the applicant have a copy of the petition?
Who?
Carlton, do you have a copy of the petition? Did you get a copy?
Do you have an
Maybe,
extra
maybe
one?
if you,
I
I think he's given
we
one.
can make copies.
He's given one.
Yeah.
I think he's grabbing one for you, Carlton. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I contact Glenn after the meeting? Is that something, just to clarify one thing, being that public hearing, where I can submit something, obviously.
To submit something so that I can share it if I need to, just to make sure it's appropriate. Yeah, thanks.
Mayor, if I could just make a comment. It was suggested that we've not been transparent in this process and the steps that were being taken, and I just completely disagree with that. And I think it's unfair to make that statement to you and us.
I appreciate you saying that because I agree with you. I think we've been very transparent, including sharing ours or my missteps on some of these things.
And Mayor, just for the record, I want to concur with that because I found that remark confusing as well.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. What I'd like to do, I warned you it'd be a long meeting. What I'd like to do is do old business A and B, and then talk about how far we want to go. Do we want to take a recess after the trees and then continue till we finish? Do we need to eliminate something? Obviously, there's two things that in new business that cannot be eliminated. So if there's no objections, I'd like to go on to old business A. Consider adoption of a resolution setting a public hearing on the subject of amending the municipal code, section 270-35D, relating to the minimum number of parking spaces for use. Again, this is setting a date for a public hearing. I would suggest that the public hearing would be July, what's the regular meeting in July? July 21. We need to consider that we'll be continuing this public hearing for the change in zoning. So do we want to push the parking off until the August regular meeting? Or do we want to go for it? I'd like some feedback, please.
I'd say you push it off to August.
I think there was a lot of consensus, and I think it's very simple. I would just get it done and get it out of the way.
That is such a laudable goal. Sometimes it
Well, let's-
doesn't turn out that way.
Well, let's put it in there and we can choose, and it'll follow the public hearing.
I completely agree, but we'll try to move it along.
Mayor, I move we adopt a resolution setting a public hearing to regarding consideration of amending 270-35D parking requirements to July 21st, 2023.
Second.
There's a time in there, we'll say at 2 o'clock PM.
O'clock.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Tony Sharp to propose that a public hearing be held on July 21 at 2 o'clock in the matter of minimum number of parking spaces required for certain uses. Is there any discussion up here? Is there any input by the members of the public? If not, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And that resolution is adopted unanimously. Thank you very much. Again, we're going to go on to the tree thing. We've divided it into two components. We're going to address the first one, which is consider approval of a new tree list. As we know, we've talked about a new tree list. Liz, how is this tree list manifest in the code? Are there references to it?
So the new proposed tree list is referenced in the code. Similarly to the way it's done now, is it says trees must be planted in accordance with the approved residential tree list, and then the way it is now, it's separate as well.
So this tree list is not incorporated into the code. It's a separate item. It's referenced by the code. But we could have just said it was a policy, but we thought it was worthwhile to vote on it, which means that if there's any changes in the future, they have to come in front of the commissioners again to be discussed and voted on. And I think that's a valuable protocol there. Are there any discussions among this list? Do you have any further comments on the list? You're fine, Liz?
Yes, I'm fine.
Susan, you were helping to manage this topic. Do you have anything to say about the tree list itself?
No, I think it's fine. And the only thing I mentioned is I think on the draft it says at the top something like approved list, but in the code it's referred to formally as the City of Rehoboth Beach residential approved list. So I think that should be the title of the, right?
I'll make it look, like right now we have, I'll make it look nicer, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
We
so
have a
it-
nice brochure and everything.
So it's referred to specifically as the residential approved list.
Approved residential tree list. Is that right?
That's what's in the code.
Residential
Right, yeah.
tree list. Okay.
I have a question, Mayor. The version we have is dated May 9th, 2023. My recollection is at our last meeting, changes were made or clarifications about what was to be included or not included on the list. And that date would have post-dated May 9th.
This I provided at the last meeting, and there were no changes to it. The meeting before we had changes, I actually had a whole list of questions the mayor presented that led just specific questions like
Okay.
about canopy width and stuff like that. So those changes are all in court, and the commissioners, I think, all agreed that they wanted more choices. And so we incorporated that into this list.
Excellent. My recollection is not good then.
I don't know, maybe
I
you're
just
thinking
wanted
of
to
something
double-check.
else.
I think we're all just sick of talking about trees.
Hey, don't hate on my trees.
Is there any further discussion by the commissioners on the residential tree list?
Mayor, I move we.
We're gonna go to the public real
sorry.
quick. Was there anybody else?
I'm getting hungry. I'm trying to move this
God, not
along.
again.
Here. You want some peanuts? Go ahead, Tom.
No, I'm Mayor,
You know
property
the
owner.
routine.
What would a tree meeting be without me being in opposition? Actually, your point, Stan, was the best point against the tree list. And I think actually you were quoted in the Cape Gazette. Once this thing is passed, which I have no doubt it'll happen later on, and I'll talk about that on the second component, I guess. There's no flexibility when you adopt a tree list into the code. And that doesn't make a lot of policy sense. If you've already admitted that the tree committee or whoever, whatever commissariat's going to be responsible for implementing this thing, has to do an education program, they're going to get some feedback. And it would make more sense for you guys to do this at a later date after that feedback with a flexibility on that tree list before it's enshrined in the code and then have to have a threshold to change it. I don't know any jurisdiction that would want to do that without the flexibility of adopting it as a policy, refining it through feedback, refining it through some livability examples of it, and then come back in 6 months to a year and say, hey, this works, this doesn't, we don't want that, that's an invasive tree, and adopt it at a different point with some better feedback. Doing it at the front end with the code doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Right, thank you, Tom. Any other members of the public? We're talking about the approved residential tree list. If not, we'll bring it back to the commissioners for further discussion or entertainment of a motion.
Question of clarification on this, and to Solicitor, is this part of the code or is this an appendix, if you will?
It won't actually show up in the code as an actual exhibit or anything, but since it is referenced in the code and this is being adopted by you as the commissioners, it is codified as law.
Thank you.
So I'm entertaining a further comment or a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt consideration approval of the new tree list as described, updated, rather dated May 9th, 2023, retitled as residential.
City of Rehoboth Beach approved residential tree list.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Patrick Gossin, a second by Commissioner Tony Sharp to approve the May 9th version 2 in front of us of the renamed City of Rehoboth Beach approved residential tree list. Is there any further discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
We just have the one no. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses, 1 no, and 1 absence. And the motion carries. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the tree code. The next item of old business is C. Consider amending Chapter 253 trees by deleting existing Chapter 253 in its entirety and inserting in lieu thereof, a new Chapter 253 trees. I want to turn it over to Susan first to see if you have anything you want to add. Then I'll turn to Liz. I think most everything's been said at this point.
It has indeed. And I think I'm only going to take 3 minutes. I know you offered up earlier today 5 for public comment, and I consider mine part of public comment today, but I only have 2 points to make, and I think I can do them quickly. And that is, I just want to make a few comments about where we are and what might come next after the tree ordinance. First of all, I was very pleased with Liz's presentation at the June 5th workshop. In only 8.5 minutes, she presented the history of the code revision, and to summarize 10 years in 8.5 minutes is no small feat. But in addition to that, she details specifically how it meets the 6 goals that were established for the revision, which resulted in an ordinance that will be easier to navigate and more flexible than the current code, and yet it preserves heritage trees and emphasizes quality over quantity. At this point, I don't know how we can ask anything more of a tree ordinance or why we would ask anything less. It is only one piece of the overall puzzle to preserve, protect, and conserve trees and to be stewards of our natural resources, which are both key goals of the 2020 Comprehensive Development Plan. So my second point is what might come next. And you may remember, or maybe not, it's been, more than 6 months, it's been about 9 months. One of the last presentations I gave as a commissioner was entitled The New Tree Ordinance and Beyond, last August 30th. And in the beyond part of that presentation, I suggested considering a landscape ordinance, including green infrastructure in all city projects, which it is primarily today, but not quite all of them, promoting lawn alternatives and pollinator gardens, and creating incentives and possible code changes that would benefit trees, such as looking at pervious surfaces. These, and I don't take any claim of these ideas. These are all ideas that came from the extensive public review of the tree ordinance. And the bottom line is, so much of what we do impacts and is impacted by trees, including stormwater management, which we're about to embark on a major plan there, any of our environmental initiatives, any work of the Tree and Green Infrastructure Committee, fulfilling the objectives of the Resilient Community Project, and especially the CDP with its over 80 references to trees. This is only a piece of the puzzle, and it's a very important piece. And I can only hope it moves forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Liz, did you want to say anything?
No, I
Don't
think
have
I'm
to.
good. I
You
think
don't
we
have
said
to.
everything.
At the last meeting, you recall, we had a robust discussion up here. I think some seemed to be in favor of it, some questioned it, some brought up that some individual components they didn't like. I had suggested at that point, well, then send me your individual components so that I could compile them and do some research on them. I received none. And so I'm really not receptive to receiving individual ones at this point because pulling out individual ones that are intertwined with everything. You can't just pull one thing out without it possibly impacting something else. So what I'd like to do is entertain a motion right now, and we'll see. If it passes, it passes, and if it doesn't, then we can solicit some individual components that people don't like and do our research on it and come back with this. Well, I was going to do a motion, discussion, and then public, but we can might sway a motion. Come ahead, Tom. Come ahead, Tom.
Not that many people here, and I'll try to be brief. So the main proponents, and Susan, I hope everyone just listened to you because that's exactly what frightens me. Once the tree proposal is done, we're coming for landscaping, driveways, and other impermeable surfaces on private property that the city does not own. That's exactly the point. The main proponents of this proposal admit it's flawed. The main points in favor, it seems to be extensive public comments. And we established in a previous meeting, it's less than 0.5% of anybody who chimed in on this, and we've seen that. A long time, lots of people, must be done. I don't understand the urgency on a flawed proposal that has no wide distribution, no referendum. You asked a great question about the Rehoboth Homeowners Association. Did they poll the owners? Well, you guys have an opportunity to poll the owners on how we feel about the tree proposal. Not doing that, no referendum, no immediate permit for dead and dying trees. If I get a dead notice from a licensed tree repair or tree removal company in the city, no deemed permit. If not approved within 4 weeks, still have an issue with 5 months to get a removal permit for a tree. No real homeowner friendly provisions baked in this. And I made that point in April. There's been no substantive change, not one, to any homeowner friendly provision. Not a single amendment, no immediate permit issue, no deemed permit issue, and also no materiality qualifier on the arborist unfettered power, which Liz, in her presentation last week, or 2 weeks ago, admitted if it's not Liz, it could be somebody else. And that power is codified, which is exactly why I was against the trees list being codified. It's now law. So with all due respect to whoever the homeowner was last week who criticized my point that it doesn't create a tree czar, yeah, it does. It reinforces a tree czar that trumps the city zoning code. And you guys know this, but it doesn't seem to phase the movement to get this done. This essentially dictates onerous rules for an asset the city doesn't own. You don't own it. With an extensive, an extortionate bypass price, you reinforce city employee power to distort the zoning code. And that's no disrespect, and that's no pejorative assessment of Liz. That's just a fact. It's in that section that I referenced numerous times. You guys know it. Hopefully you've read it. Nowhere did it suggest in any data that anyone has presented that this appeal, that this proposal is going to reduce the number of appeals. We have X number of appeals, and we expect that there'll be Y number of appeals. Nobody has brought that up as a proponent in favor of this thing. Nobody has said it's going to save us any money. It's going to save us legal fees because there are going to be fewer appeals. So there's no benefit that anybody has touched on except some exotic benefits the 36 people representing 12 homes sent you in the support letter. So in conclusion, I'll finish up the diatribe. Start over. Build in common sense solutions. You've had 3 months of me railing at you guys. Not a single person other than 2 have reached out and said, hey, how can we fix this? You can fix it by putting in homeowner-friendly provisions. If you care about property rights, and I know some of you do, some of you don't, putting in those homeowner-friendly provisions will ameliorate any animosity in a provision that is targeted to assets you don't own. And when you start coming with other proposals for assets that you don't own, you're going to get the same pushback, hopefully more pushback, as people start to pay more attention, because now we know trees, and then I'm coming for everything else. Thank you for admitting that, Susan.
Thank you, Tom. Any other members of the public want to speak? I do want to acknowledge that we have received, I believe, extra correspondence that was not embedded in the agenda, so that'll be done after the fact. My recollection, one was from Suzanne Good that was in the same vein of Tom, if you will. And there was another one that had the petition in it, I think.
That was from Wynn Achenbaum.
Wynn Achenbaum with
And
the
I believe it has
petition.
36 signatures of support for
Right.
for the ordinance. They are all property owners, and I believe it's already embedded in the agenda.
Okay.
That's been taken care of while we have been occupied. So that's just FYI.
Mayor, I move we adopt an ordinance to amend Chapter 253 Trees of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, by deleting the existing Chapter 253 Trees in its entirety and inserting in lieu thereof a new Chapter 253 Trees provided today and dated June 5th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion to adopt the ordinance in front of us to amend Chapter 253 trees by deleting the existing Chapter 253s in its entirety and inserting in lieu thereof a new Chapter 253 trees. This version in front of us, by the way, is presentation date June 5th, 2023, and the date on it is May 24th, 2023. Is there any further discussion among the commissioners?
Question, this is not zoning. We do not have to give an explanation?
It's not technically zoning, but I have asked the mayor to ask for a roll call vote, just given the sensitive nature of this ordinance.
I believe I'm next to start with, have I started with you before?
I think it's
No.
me, yeah.
Commissioner Shanowski then.
Mayor, before you
Oh,
start to take
yes,
the
ma'am.
vote,
Yes, ma'am.
or I could just say that when I do my vote.
Yeah,
Go
but,
ahead. Go ahead.
I
Go ahead.
offered discussion, I think might
Just
be
a statement,
retorted or something.
so press
Okay.
on.
Okay, so Commissioner Shanowski?
Sure. Because of the lack of focus in trees and public space, and having the city lead by example, and because I don't agree with the addition of each lot containing a hotel, motel, or inn in section 253-22, or the rationale behind that has been added or articulated, and my objection to section 253-25, which gives discretion to city staff to deny permits based on design and location of new homes or improvements, and because of the overall length and complexity of this ordinance, and that we've heard from other tree cities that have much shorter, simpler versions, I vote nay.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, thank you. I think this has been begun back with the Planning Commission in 2014, went to the Law and Oversight Committee in March of 2020, and then the Parks and Shade Tree Commission in July of 2020 also. Then it came to us in February of 2021. Open for public comment through all of those previous areas. And I just feel that it may not be perfect, certainly has been expressed here today, but it is much improved over our current code, and I think we need to move forward. And what comes to mind is an old Chinese saying, is that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is now. To paraphrase that, the best time to revise a tree code was 10 years ago, the second best time is now. I vote aye.
Commissioner Markert.
I've been waiting for this this opportunity for a long time. I think this comes to the sort of root of governance, like how in the hell do we govern ourselves, and how is it that we are able to do this? And the fact that I see trees as inseparable from Rehoboth as the beach. It's a resource that we need to manage. It makes us the city we are. It is emblematic of a treed seaside town. And the fact that we wrestle with this whole prospect of, you know, what rights do we have and so forth and so on. And we can, you know, and if we have not demonstrated that we have beat this to death over the last 11 years or whatever the number is, and I finally feel like we've created this marvelous puree of tree ordinance that is not perfect, and it has its issues. However, I see it as a living document. It will far outlive us. I know that, and I just have to feel that we have the wherewithal to be able to manage this. And there will be changes. There will be changes in the tree list. There will be, but I think the only way we can manage it is by doing it. And so I foresee changes in the future, and I think we'll be back here talking about various aspects, and is it meeting its goals and so forth and so on. But we have to do this, and therefore I vote aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Sharp?
I have been railing about something, I think, for quite some time, and that is the ability to convey the content of this ordinance in a simple and easy way to the community, to our community. So I have to step up and make a commitment that if I'm going to criticize something, I'm going to offer a solution. If I'm going to support something, I need to be able to justify all of it. So I have been asking for something like a homeowner's guide to the tree code. I wanted that before I had to cast a vote, but I will guarantee going forward, I will be in everybody's face about it is right to have a homeowner's guide to the tree code. And I believe it could be very helpful, that if we can't put things into simple form and not just a comparison chart, it may lead us to some things that need improvement. Because I personally believe this particular ordinance will never be finished. It should be viewed as a dynamic issue for us to always be on top of and see what is working and what is not working. And the last thing I'm going to say is it has been stated a couple of times that this thing is too long. Well, the communities that were stated, Richfield, Connecticut, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, Bar Harbor, Maine, just as an example, yes, they have shorter tree codes, but they have a 28-page separate document where they talk about the responsibilities of their tree warden. They also, another city has 14 additional sections that supplement their tree ordinance. So the reason I'm bringing this up is you can't just put it out there that the tree ordinance is shorter and only give part of the story. So I think that's not accurate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on getting a simple guide and making sure that as we go forward, we are periodically having this item on an agenda to actually be informed of how is it going. And I think with HQ coming up, we can continuously get feedback from our citizens. So with all of that having been said, maybe not as elegantly as I would like, I am voting aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree?
Before the meeting started, I promised Commissioner Sharp that I wouldn't say anything, make a speech, or...
I already violated that, so knock yourself out.
I think we could have fixed it, but we tweaked it. And I vote no.
All right. And the chair votes yes for the reasons all my colleagues said. I'm not quite as poetic as Bunky, but I agree with everything he said. I do believe we need to add the feedback, Commissioner Sharp, members of the Parks and Shade Tree Commission, as well as members of the public. So,
Absolutely.
with that, the tree ordinance is passed with a 4-0 vote, 4-2 vote. Thank you very much. Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Liz. You did a great job. Susan, you did a great job.
Glenn,
you worked your rear off.
Glenn, I'd like to ask you, we have a Parks and Shade Tree Commission meeting coming up that's already scheduled and published. How do we integrate the new code with the Parks and Shade Tree Commission?
So I think that this is is an ordinance that it takes effect immediately, but those items that were in the pipeline that are appearing before the Parks and Shade Tree Commission, I would anticipate and expect that they would be subject to the ordinance under which they filed their appeals, so they would continue to go forward that way. They do have the obligation to withdraw and refile under the newly adopted
Is that
ordinance.
obligation? They have the opportunity.
The opportunity to, my
Right.
mistake, yeah, the opportunity.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all. With that, we're going to go, I said that we would take a look at our agenda. Would you feel comfortable just trudging away?
May I weigh in just for a moment, because I did not preview this for you.
Yeah.
Months ago, I promised my wife that we'd be at a theater production this evening in Baltimore, and we need to leave like in the next 20 minutes to do it. So if possible, I mean, you should continue with your meeting if you want to. Alex he's spun up on all of
Is
these
he gonna be here?
topics and happy to do it, but I apologize. I didn't know this meeting was going to move to 2:30.
Is he able to monitor that? I mean, is he able to monitor everything? All right. Goodbye.
I apologize all.
What are you seeing?
I don't even want to say out loud. Cabaret, okay? Cabaret.
Rollerball. That's my guess, rollerball. All righty. Well, then we're just going to trudge on. We shouldn't be too much longer, actually. Old business D. Or do you want to, does anybody want to, would you want to go on to these two first, get them out of the way?
I'm comfortable staying with the old business.
Okay, you're not going anywhere. Old business D, consider adoption of an ordinance to amend Chapter 215 restaurants of the code by amending sections 215-23 and 215-24 relating to license application renewals and license applications. Does anybody want to review this?
No. I'm just saying.
This is thank you. This is actually fairly simple. It has to do with reapplications for outdoor dining on public space to make it more palatable to the person applying by reducing a reapplication fee and easing up the process. Is there any further discussion up here?
I just have one question on the way out the door. Glenn, I'm sorry. This seems to be about the aspect of subsequent city managers has been removed from this specifics. So we had the interest that the city manager could make determinations during the prior year of operation if there were infractions or what have you. That seems to, I don't see it, and maybe I'm just misreading or somewhere else.
This is the revised one. Right? So in the revised one, it says, if the applicant is currently a party to a license agreement, meaning that's previously been approved by the commissioners, and wishes to modify the previously approved outdoor dining area on public space, they must submit a new license application for outdoor dining that complies with the chapter.
Right.
It's just licenses for outdoor. Let's see. With all
Letter E? Didn't we adjust letter E?
I thought it was still in here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
because it was supposed to. It's supposed to indicate that if there's no changes to it, the city manager can reissue. Alex, am I missing that somewhere? Because I think you worked on this as well.
I just, what I see is missing is, if I can read, however, the subsection will not apply if the city manager determines that during the prior year of operation, the applicant violated one or more of the conditions of this article. The applicant's outdoor dining on public space was not operated in a manner that was consistent with the previous license. The applicant's outdoor dining on public space was being operated in a manner which constitutes a nuisance. The outdoor dining on public space was being operated in a manner that unduly impeded or restricted the movement of pedestrians, or on the outdoor dining was being operated in a manner that was detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants of the city.
I thought we concluded all that one into letter E.
D?
E. E, echo?
E is a revocation. The city manager may revoke.
Revoke.
License. It seems to me that subsection B, the last sentence, says such licenses for outdoor dining on public space may be issued by the city manager, are not subject to the non-refundable fee of $150 detailed in subsection 215. I think that sentence is supposed to say, should there be no changes, so this first part says if you're changing, if you're already subject to a license agreement and you're changing it, you have to come back. The second part of subsection B, I think, was supposed to say, to the extent an applicant who is currently party to a license agreement does not want to make any changes, such licenses for outdoor dining on public space may be issued by the city manager and are not subject to the non-refundable fee of $150 detailed in subsection 215-24A.
Maybe we come back to this.
But you're right, it's not.
Look, nobody's going to make reapplication for months. So let's postpone this and clean it up.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for catching that.
Yeah. Because I'm still confused on that one. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, move on to the next item of old business, and put that screen up there again if you would. E, old business E, consider adoption when we have two basement things. If you recall, we had issues 1, 2, and 3 in the basements. I concluded the last meeting with postponing this to the July workshop. I went back and re-listened to the audio and realized that we seem to have consensus on everything. And I hated to delay it. So I chose, rather than defer on these till July, to put item number 2, I think, in as the first item on business today, which is E. And then for F, that's issues 1 and 3. And again, putting them off to the July workshop would have meant for items 1 and 3, would have meant voting to go to resolution at the July regular meeting and then not voting on it until the June, July, August. So this accelerates it a month, basically. So you all have to feel comfortable with that, my change in my mind.
I'm glad you did, because we do have pending, we have pending permits that
Yes.
are.
I think this was the one where there were 2 that we know of in the pipeline.
Right.
Okay,
I'm happy with the change.
agree. Should we vote?
you said you're unhappy?
No, I said I am happy.
Oh, okay, okay. So we've got in front of us, let me see. Oh, boy, let me find.
Well, we can actually vote on E. F, we're just setting a public hearing.
Yeah, so they're still conducting two votes. So for the first one, do you want to go back and explain anything about the first one?
I think we've reached consensus on it several times. So,
This is to
Mayor, if I
remove it
may.
in its entirety. Remove that
Yeah,
section of
so
code
let's
in
just,
its
let's
entirety.
just summarize. The synopsis says this ordinance amends Chapter 102, Section 102-51 of Municipal Code to revise the required measurements for habitable spaces. And how it does that, Matt, is how? It actually removes an old code
Yes, the section of code
change.
taking the 8 foot.
Removes that we went from 7 to 8 foot, and now it's going to effectively take us back to a 7-foot minimum height requirement.
So, Mayor, if I may, then, may I make a motion?
Wanna,
Public?
yeah, there we go. Is there any members of the public that want to offer anything? Hearing none. Commissioner, go
I
ahead.
make a motion to amend Chapter 102 of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 2001, as amended by amending Section 102-51 relating to requisite ceiling heights for habitable basements.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Patrick Gossett and a second by Commissioner Tony Sharp to amend Chapter 102 of the Municipal Code by amending 102-57 relating to requisite ceiling height for habitable basements. Is there any further discussion? Is anybody going to vote no? Because I would do it, I would poll us. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and the motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. One down. Again, I feel comfortable having put this on the agenda after I said I would defer to July workshop because we're just voting to set a date, and it still gives us 4 weeks for the public to understand what we're doing in there. So what we would be looking at is to, because these are in the zoning code, different than what we just did, we would seek a date of the 21st of July to be able to expedite this. Yeah, but this, I thought there was urgency to this. Whereas some of the other things, they're.
That's just saying it's 3 public hearings in a single meeting. I'm not sure that we got enough hours in the day for that.
Well, we didn't for this one either. I'm gonna do it, but we may have to evaluate during the meeting. We are evaluating, we already have a motion. No,
we do
we're
not.
seeking a motion to set a date, and if so, then it would be the 21st of July. City manager pointed out, we've got another long plate, but
Mayor, I move we adopt a resolution to set a public hearing to amend sections 270-4 and 270-21B1C relating to the definition of basement and crawl space and gross floor area exemption for qualifying basements to the 2 o'clock regular meeting scheduled on July 21st.
Second.
we have a motion by Commissioner Sharnowski and a second by Commissioner Sharp, setting a public hearing in the matter of sections 270-4 and 270-21B1C relating to the definition of basement and crawl space and gross floor area exemption for qualifying basements, setting such public hearing at our July 21st regular meeting. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion's carried unanimously also. With that, how we doing here? New business A, submission of nominating petitions for commissioners' approval as the qualifications of candidates for the annual municipal election scheduled for August 12th, 2023. Even though there doesn't appear to need an election, we still have to qualify the candidates. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Reading memorandum dated June 7, 2023 from the Donna Moore. She is the official for elections. Nominating petitions filed for the 2023 annual municipal election. 1, Stanley A. Mills Jr., a resident of the city of Rehoboth Beach, filed a nomination petition for the office of mayor on Tuesday, May 16, 2023 at approximately 3:43 p.m. Mr. Mills provided a Rehoboth Beach, Delaware driver's license, providing that he has attained the age of 21. The affidavit circular stated the nominated petitions filed had 16 signatures. 16 of the 16 signatures were verified to be registered voters of the city of Rehoboth Beach. James P. Gossett, a resident of the city of Rehoboth Beach, filed a nominating petition for the office of commissioner on Thursday, May 25th, 2023 at approximately 11:28 a.m. Mr. Gossett provided a Rehoboth Beach, Delaware driver's license, providing that he has attained the age of 21. The affidavit of circular stated the nominating petition filed had 15 signatures. 14 of the 15 signatures were verified to be registered voters of the city of Rehoboth Beach. 1 is not registered. J.D. Legree, a resident of the city of Rehoboth Beach, filed a nomination petition for the office of commissioner on Tuesday, May 30th, 2023 at approximately 10:24 a.m. Mr. Legree provided a Rehoboth Beach, Delaware driver's license, proving that he has attained the age of 21. The affidavit of circular stating that the nomination petition had filed 13 signatures. 13 of the 13 signatures were verified to be registered voters of the city of Rehoboth Beach. On Tuesday, June 6, 2023, at 11:26 a.m., Mr. Legree sent an email withdrawing his nominating petition for the office of commissioner. Donald G. Preston Jr., a resident of the city of Rehoboth Beach, filed a nominating petition for the office of commissioner on Tuesday, May 30, 2023, at approximately 4:30 p.m. Mr. Preston provided the Rehoboth Beach, Delaware driver's license, proving that he's attained the age of 21. The affidavit of circular stating the nominating petitions filed had 18 signatures. 12 of the 18 signatures were verified to be registered voters of the city of Rehoboth Beach. 3 were not registered, and 2 signed nominating petitions of more candidates than they were elected officials to be filled. That concludes the report. I have all the supporting documents with me.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree, since you withdrew, there's no point in judging your qualifications. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I probably wouldn't pass.
Okay, okay. And so I don't remember the past procedure. Did we, Patrick, you've done these as
We
many as
used to do them individually, but we can do them.
one
I
at a
would
time?
do them all in one slate. Mayor, I move we approve the petitions for commissioners for Mr. Gossett and Mr. Preston, and approve the petition for the commissioner with the title of mayor for Mr. Mills, for the 2023 municipal election for the city of Rehoboth Beach.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Shinowski and a second by Commissioner Legree to approve the submissions in front of us. Is there any discussion up here before I go to the public?
Walter Birmingham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. Without being snide, I brought it up last time. There is no such thing as a Rehoboth Beach driver's license. They should be a state of Delaware driver's license with listing a Rehoboth address. It should be technically correct. And if you read them again, you'll recognize the fact that I'm correct. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Any further, anybody else? No? With that, we'll take a group motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And they pass the test. With that, we'll go to the last item of business. Set the city real estate tax rate for the tax year beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2024. There is a, is that? Yeah, do you have it?
Yes.
You want maybe read it or something?
Mayor and Commissioner, before is a ordinance to establish tax rate on, from July 1st, 2023, ending June 30th, 2024. Whereas Section 224B1 of Rehoboth Beach Charter provides that annually, the mayor and commissioner shall establish a tax rate on real estate, including improvements thereon, per $100 of assessed value. And whereas mayor and commissioner desire to set a tax rate on real estate for the tax year beginning July 1, 2023, and ending June 30, 2024, at 6 cents per $100 of assessed value. There is no increase in tax rate for this year.
And that's based on our discussions at the budget meetings,
Yes.
right?
Based all developed on the budget development process.
So I would entertain a motion to set, simply say, setting the tax rate at 6 cents per 100 assessed value.
So moved.
So move. Second, whatever.
We have a motion by Commissioner Patrick Gossett and a second by Commissioner Legree to setting the tax rate at 6 cents per 100 assessed value. Is there any discussion? Any members of the public?
Mayor,
What,
I have a
discussion?
question.
Oh, you do, go ahead.
When I ran 3 years ago, I promised that I wouldn't raise taxes, and we haven't. Thank you.
Congratulations.
You just jinxed us.
As on his way out, he's suggesting a new utility tax for this stormwater.
All righty, thank you very much, everybody. With that, we're coming to conclusion. Are there any commissioner announcements or comments?
I have just two quick comments.
Yes, ma'am.
I have to make a public thank you and acknowledgement to Susan Gay for her persistence on the tree ordinance, and for Liz Lingo for her patience with this whole process and her service to this city in a very challenging position.
Thank you.
Here, here.
I want to go on to review future meeting dates. Monday, July 10th is our workshop meeting at 9 a.m. Friday, July 21 is a 2 o'clock regular meeting, back to regular time. Reminder that offices are closed Monday, June 19th for Juneteenth. What? For the tax rate?
Oh, we didn't vote on the tax.
I thought I did a group
Oh,
vote.
did we? I think I'm losing.
Ann, do you know if I did a vote?
I don't think we voted.
Does anybody know if I did a vote?
Everyone's shaking their head no. So
We didn't vote.
Okay, well, we have a motion by Patrick, I believe, and a second by Jay. All those in favor of setting the tax rate at 6 cents per 100 assessed value signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. And when you listen to the tape, I want to know if I just did this twice or just once.
I'll never tell.
Let's see, reminder, the offices are closed June 19th. And then also just a reminder that it's not a city-sponsored function. It's sponsored by the Army Corps of Engineers, I believe. July 28th, special meeting, 9 a.m. In the convention hall. And,
Not July. It's not July. It's June.
and it's not a special meeting. It's a
It's
town
a
hall.
town hall.
Takes a village.
Citizen comment, anything, Walter? Nope. Well, thank you all very much. I'm pleased to be able to adjourn the meeting at 6:07 p.m. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience.